Our boy just died at 16 years old, and he breaks down crying because he couldn't save his mom. But his mom's spirit finds him. She tells him sorry and forgives him. And before he knows it, he comes back to life. He wakes up in his 15-year-old body. And he's back before the time monsters appeared. Everyone at school is shocked to see how different he is. And he still can't believe it's real. He starts doubting who he is. But then his mom sees him. And she can't believe it's him, because she came back too. Our boy is walking with his mom, but the monsters secretly are already there. Our main character still doesn't have powers, but he has so much raw strength he throws it off himself. Hours later, he can't believe what's changed. Then he realizes he now has a system. He gets teleported to some random place, where there are now creatures like elves, and our boy's friends don't recognize who he is anymore. Even his mom is shocked at how much he eats, but our boy also likes helping the elderly out, and even young kids who need help. Despite people all around him fearing who he is, he still decides to become the savior. A faint hand reaches through the dark, as if the dead are still begging for one last chance. In that empty space, a young Kim Sunjin stands alone with a weight no child should ever carry. The voices do not ask him for comfort. They ask him to save the world. More hands reach toward him, calling him the hero while he can barely understand the word. The pleas pile up behind him until the title hero feels less like praise and more like a curse. Sunjin lowers his head, already crushed by a responsibility that sounds impossible. When he whispers for his mother, the fear finally breaks through his face. His mother appears in the dark, silent at first, with countless hands still reaching around them. She looks at him gently, but even her presence carries the sadness of a world already lost. Sunjin reaches toward her, scared of being left behind and scared of what she is asking. Instead of saving him from the burden, she prepares him to face it. Their hands separate, and the distance between them becomes the first goodbye he never wanted. Sunjin realizes the request means he may have to walk into the same fate as everyone else. The hands swallow the darkness around him, dragging him away from the last warmth he remembers. A tear lands on a much older face, where that childhood terror has never fully disappeared. Years later, Sunjin wakes in armor, beaten down but still alive in a ruined battlefield. The city around him is broken, and even sitting up looks like it costs him everything. He grabs his sword again, joking to himself that a little rest was apparently too much to ask. From the shattered building, he steps back toward the fight because stopping is no longer an option. Below him, monsters flood the ruined street, filling every path like the world itself has turned against him. Sunjin forces a tired smile, knowing the enemies are not giving him even one clean breath. The horde spreads beneath him and the scale of the battle makes survival feel almost ridiculous. The monsters notice him at once, and the entire swarm begins climbing toward the last human standing. Sunjin exhales, not from confidence but from accepting there is no way around this. He launches himself into the swarm, turning the ruined street into a storm of steel. The monsters rush from every direction, trying to bury him under numbers instead of skill. Sunjin twists through the charge, keeping his blade moving before they can surround him. Light cuts across the battlefield and the first wave is torn apart before it can reach him. A monster's attack crashes in close, but Sunjin forces his way through the impact. The swarm looks up as he rises again, refusing to stay where they expect him to fall. He drives forward with the same exhausted anger that has kept humanity alive this long. For a moment, the battlefield goes quiet, as if even the monsters are waiting for the next strike. Sunjin drops back down with enough force to scatter the enemies around him. The landing costs him, and his breathing turns rough the second the burst of strength fades. He braces himself with his sword, coughing through the pain while the rain keeps falling. From above, Fafnir acknowledges him as humanity's hero, which somehow sounds more like an insult. The real enemy steps into view, towering over the ruins with a presence that makes the horde look small. Fafnir studies Sunjin with amusement, almost admiring how far one human has managed to crawl. Sunjin looks up at Fafnir, fully aware that this is the monster behind everything. His eyes narrow, but exhaustion is starting to win in places his willpower cannot protect. Fafnir's attack crashes down with terrifying force, swallowing the street in a violent burst of power. Sunjin is thrown down hard, coughing as his body finally begins to give out. Fafnir laughs over him, asking if this is really how humanity's final hope disappears. The sky fills with monsters again, and Sunjin's body answers before his mind can even process it. He stares upward through the rain, too wounded to pretend this fight is still fair. Fafnir's power gathers again, turning the ruined city into the stage for one final punishment. In front of that monster, every victory Sunjin fought for suddenly feels painfully small. His eye opens in silence, and the battlefield begins slipping away from him. The mech's blink feels wrong, too clean, too bright, and nothing like the end of the world. Instead of monsters, Sunjin sees students leaning over him with faces that look way too alive. His shock sharpens as he realizes this is not another vision from the battlefield. He wakes up on the ground, surrounded by bullies, and immediately asks what is happening. Sunjin's mind scrambles, trying to understand why the apocalypse has been replaced by schoolyard nonsense. He looks at his hands, and the truth starts forming before he is ready to accept it. The sky above him is clear, bright, and painfully normal compared to the world he just left. One bully stands behind him, annoyed that Sunjin is staring around instead of acting scared. Sunjin keeps looking at the sky, trying to separate memory from reality. The bullies laugh at him for mumbling in his sleep, treating this like another easy day of picking on him. Sunjin starts to call them out, but the blonde bully cuts him off and tells him to grit his teeth. He stares at the hand grabbing his hoodie, still too confused to react like the old victim. The bully stomps down toward him, expecting Sunjin to freeze the way he always used to. Sunjin catches the ankle midair, and the mood changes before anyone understands why. His old combat instincts move first, turning the bully's attack against him in one clean motion. Sunjin strikes back before the bully can recover, sending him flying across the ground. The bully hits the floor hard, and the whole rooftop goes quiet in the funniest possible way. The others stare in complete panic, suddenly realizing the punching bag just learned how to punch back. Sunjin sits there with his fists raised, just as surprised by his own body as everyone else. The shout about police arriving breaks the tension, and the bullies immediately lose their courage. Sunjin turns toward the voice, still trying to fit this normal world inside his impossible memories. Someone calls him Kim Sunjin, confirming that this really is his past self. His body aches as he gets up, weak, in all the ways his future body was not. He limps toward a fallen phone, searching for proof that his mind is not falling apart. Sunjin picks it up carefully, as if the screen might answer the impossible question for him. He checks the phone with shaking focus, trying to understand when he has returned to. His face tightens as the reality settles in, and the battlefield finally becomes something worse than a dream. The reflection confirms the impossible. The hero has awakened inside his younger body. After the world collapsed, monsters began walking through ruined cities as if humanity had already lost. The attack spread everywhere, with flying monsters and ground beasts turning normal streets into hunting grounds. But while monsters appeared, humans also began awakening powers strong enough to fight back. Sunjin remembers that he was one of those awakened long before he became humanity's last hope. Now he sits in a police station, trapped in the body of his 19-year-old self. The silence gives him no comfort because returning to the past only creates more questions. The officer in front of him tries to get a straight answer, but Sunjin is barely present. Sunjin finally gives his name, while still processing that this timeline is real. The station keeps moving around him, completely normal in a way that almost feels fake. He looks around carefully, searching for anything that proves this is not another illusion. Even the clock matters now, because every normal detail helps him confirm when he has returned. His eyes sharpen as the date and situation begin lining up with his memories. The officer confirms he is 19, placing Sunjin right before everything should begin. Sunjin answers calmly, but his face makes it clear his mind is somewhere much darker. He remembers that his medical college entrance exams should be near, yet none of that feels important anymore. The memory of his final battle tears through him, dragging the destroyed future back into his head. His fist tightens as the question hits him harder than the police interrogation ever could. This second chance is real, but he still has no idea what happened to his original body. If he wants to return or prevent that future, he needs answers he does not have yet. The officer watches him closely, probably wondering why this student looks like he survived 3 wars before lunch. A report about monsters near construction sites catches Sunjin's attention at the exact wrong time. Before he can think it through, a young woman rushes in with fear written across her face. She grabs him in panic, checking his face like she expected to find him seriously hurt. Her hands shake as relief and fear collide, and Sunjin can only stare back in confusion. The closeness forces him to recognize her, but the memories are still buried under 20 years of war. By sunset, they leave the station together and the normal city feels almost impossible to trust. They walk side by side, but Sunjin is still trying to understand where this version of his life stands. She talks to him gently, worried by how distant he has been since the incident. Sunjin studies her face, slowly realizing how much of this past he has forgotten. The concern in her eyes makes him pause, because this is not a battlefield or a strategy meeting. She takes out a handkerchief, treating his injuries with the kind of care he has not felt in years. Her touch is soft, and that simple kindness hits harder than he expects. She tells him not to worry, trying to comfort him while he struggles to remember how normal people act. When she holds his hand, Sunjin feels the gap between his old life and this returned one. He looks down, unsure how to respond to someone who still sees him as the boy from this time. She notices the change in him, and the silence between them starts becoming its own answer. She asks if something happened today, and Sunjin can only give the smallest response. He looks away, knowing the truth would sound insane even before the monsters arrive. A claw touches the pavement nearby and the peaceful sunset breaks without warning. A shadow wolf bares its teeth, proving the reports were not just distant news anymore. She calls back to him, But Sunjin has already heard the danger moving behind them. His senses react before his body does, picking up the sound of monsters closing in. The wolves charge from behind, turning a quiet walk home into the beginning of a nightmare. Sunjin recognizes the monster at once, and the old survivor inside him wakes up immediately. The first wolf attacks, and the young woman is thrown aside before he can stop it. Sunjin's denial snaps into focus as the monster crashes into the ground. He understands now that the police report was warning about this exact kind of incident. The construction site nearby has already become a monster zone and he is standing right beside it. More wolves appear, circling them with the confidence of predators that found easy prey. Sunjin knows the problem is not fear but finding a weapon before the next charge. He spots an umbrella stand, and in this body even a cheap umbrella becomes valuable. The wolves move in as he grabs the closest thing that can pass for a weapon. Sunjin plants himself between the wolves and the injured woman, forcing his weak body to obey. The first monster lunges straight at him, trying to overwhelm him with raw speed. He times the strike cleanly, driving the umbrella forward before the wolf can reach his throat. The hit sends the monster off balance, buying him a second but not ending the threat. Sunjin stays focused, realizing this younger body cannot keep up with his future instincts for long. Another wolf snaps down on the umbrella, turning his only weapon into a liability. Its claws clamp over his arm and Sunjin feels the strength gap immediately. He strains against it, stuck on the ground while the monster forces the umbrella down. A second wolf dives from above, aiming for the opening he cannot defend. Sunjin looks up and realizes his body is too slow to dodge this attack. The young woman suddenly kicks into the fight, knocking the monster aside before it reaches him. Sunjin stares in shock, because the person he thought he needed to protect has just protected him. Before Sunjin can move, his mother throws herself into the wolves and knocks them back with pure instinct. Sunjin freezes, because the woman he came back desperate to protect is fighting right in front of him. She kicks one wolf down and scrambles away, but the fight has already taken too much from her. Sunjin's shock turns cold when he realizes his mother is pushing herself far past her limit. He forces the umbrella forward again, keeping one wolf away before it can reach her. The moment she collapses, Sunjin shouts for his mother and forgets everything except getting to her. He grabs her and checks her injuries, terrified that this second life might repeat the worst memory first. She can barely answer him, but the fact that she is breathing gives him something to hold on to. Sunjin stares down at her, shaken by the impossible relief that she is still alive. He pulls her close, protecting her with the same desperation he once carried for 20 years. The wolves are still nearby, but for 1 second he can only hear his own fear. That fear darkens into anger as the monsters close in around the person he almost lost again. Sunjin's expression changes, and the helpless student on the ground starts feeling like someone else entirely. He turns back toward the wolves, asking if they are in that much of a rush to disappear. The wolves lunge all at once, trying to finish the prey before he can stand properly. Sunjin lifts the umbrella like a weapon, and for a moment his old battle presence slips through. His feet hit the ground, but the weakness of this young body reminds him this will not be clean. He drops back after the exchange, winded already while his mother lies helpless behind him. Sunjin looks up in frustration, realizing the problem is not skill but stamina. His mind is ready for war, but his body is still a normal teenager with terrible endurance. With no better option, he carries his mother himself and gets away from the attack site. Every step hurts, but Sunjin keeps moving because stopping would mean trusting luck again. Night falls by the time he reaches the hospital, turning the escape into a quiet race against time. His mother finally rests in a bed, and Sunjin lets out the breath he had been holding. He stays beside her, watching closely because the past has taught him not to believe safety too quickly. Even after calling for help, he cannot relax while she lies there injured because of him. The doctor's reassurance gives him a little room to breathe, but the guilt does not leave. Sunjin asks about her condition, needing the answer to be real before he can move forward. The relief settles slowly, and his face becomes calmer than his hands feel. A memory returns, of his mother fighting just like this, protecting him even when she had nothing left. Sunjin looks at her sleeping body and realizes he nearly watched the same tragedy begin again. The question hits him hard, because coming back means nothing if he only repeats his old failures. He stares at his hands, remembering every power he once had, and every person he still failed to save. Those hands tremble now, weak and empty compared to the hero he used to be. Sunjin clenches his fist, refusing to accept a second life where the ending stays the same. He came back to change the future, not to replay the same nightmare with a younger face. A glowing gate suddenly opens in the room, cutting straight through his thoughts. The system announces that the Tower of Trials is requesting entry, and Sunjin instantly recognizes the danger. It calls for a user, and Sunjin realizes the gate has not appeared for him by accident. The system approves the connection, confirming that someone in this room has awakened potential. The gate identifies Kim Soo-yoon as the subject, and Sunjin understands his mother was meant to enter. A doorway opens from the hospital room into the abyss, the place where humans first prove themselves. Sunjin connects the pieces fast, because her strength against the wolves was not normal luck. If his mother has awakened talent, then this trial could decide whether she survives the future. He looks at the gate with caution, knowing the tower is never kind to beginners. Inside, the tower welcomes its challenger into a bright arena that feels more like judgment than training. Sunjin remembers the Tower of Trials, also called the Abyss, where awakened humans begin their growth. The first floor gives people the qualifications to awaken, then rewards strength through completed trials. The higher the floor, the greater the danger and the more valuable the system becomes. Sunjin knows that most people climb carefully, but careful choices will not stop Fafnir. When the system asks for difficulty, he immediately sees the path most beginners would avoid. Sunjin selects level 10, choosing the hardest setting on the first floor without hesitation. The tower confirms the level 10 trial, and the arena begins shifting around him. Sunjin almost smiles because playing safe would only lead back to the same ruined future. His expression hardens as he commits to changing the pattern before it can trap him again. He knows repeating his old choices will only create the same tragic end he already lived through. The tower offers weapons, and Sunjin stands beneath a circle of blades with no time to overthink. Shadow wolves gather around the arena, proving the trial is wasting absolutely no time. Sunjin grips a sword as the system announces that his trial is about to begin. A few hours later, another participant is already learning that the tower does not grade on effort. The man screams as the wolves chase him, and his confidence has clearly left the building. He backs away in panic while the wolves advance, turning the trial into a nightmare. The wolves close the distance and the participant loses his balance before he can form a plan. They snarl over him, ready to finish the fight before he can even understand the rules. One wolf roars in his face, and the man completely breaks under the pressure. A flash of blue light cuts across the arena before the wolves can reach him. Sunjin appears through the attack, calm enough to make the impossible look routine. He moves past the first wolf and strikes cleanly, saving the participant before panic gets him killed. The slash tears through the pack's momentum, forcing the monsters to scatter instead of surround him. The wolves regroup, but Sunjin is already reading their movement like a problem he solved years ago. His presence drops over the arena, and the monsters hesitate for the first time. The last wolf growls at him, but Sunjin's focus is already past fear. His blade flashes through the trial, ending the fight before the survivor can even process what happened. The system announces Kim Soo-yoon has cleared level 10, while Sunjin stands behind the result he stole for her. After his mother clears level 10 under her own name, the outside world starts learning what the system really is. Reporters explain that dungeons in the Tower of Trials work differently. Even though both reshape human strength, nobody fully understands why they appeared, only that the world changed around the same time. Awakened people quickly chase the rewards, fame, and money that come from climbing higher. Dungeons stay dangerous in the real world since ignored monsters can eventually break out. Inside the tower, people are already gossiping about the updated rankings. The other challengers gather in groups, curious about the new name that suddenly appeared. Kim Soo-yoon reaches first place with 230 points, which makes Sunjin's plan instantly noticeable. A break gate welcomes more challengers into the Tower of Trials. Sunjin steps through calmly, returning to a place he remembers better than his own school. He lets out a breath, feeling the strange comfort of a battlefield that at least makes sense. The tower city spreads in front of him, clean and peaceful on the surface. This floor is where countless awakened people gather before flooding into higher stages. The streets are packed with challengers, merchants, and people chasing their next upgrade. Most awakened stay near the floors that match their points, building a whole society around the list. Sunjin's points came from clearing a level 10 trial that most beginners would never survive. The trial floor is left covered with defeated monsters, and Sunjin is still catching his breath. Even he admits that without his memories, level 10 would have ended him immediately. The more he fights, the more his old senses begin returning to his younger body. That progress matters because instinct is the only reason he keeps surviving impossible choices. The system confirms 2230 achievement points, giving him enough value to start preparing properly. Sunjin calculates his next move, hoping that amount can carry him safely to the next floor. He knows points are not just a score here, they are the currency for survival. Instead of rushing upward, he opens the shop options and starts choosing what actually matters. A skill shop sign catches his attention, pointing him toward exactly the kind of upgrade he needs. Sunjin enters the shop, already planning how to turn points into future-changing power. Behind the counter, the merchant watches him with a smile that says she has seen every type of customer. She reaches for an item before Sunjin even finishes measuring the room. The merchant offers it with practiced confidence, treating the sale almost like a game. This is Veli, a dark elf skill merchant who knows the value of every point better than most climbers. Sunjin understands the real question is not what looks strong, but what fits the path he needs. Veli studies him more closely, realizing he is not shopping like a normal beginner. Her smile sharpens as she waits to see whether this quiet kid actually has anything worth spending. Sunjin answers with the kind of calm that makes her curiosity worse. He pays 1150 points at once, choosing utility over flashy strength. Veli nearly loses it, shocked that a first floor challenger is spending that much without blinking. Sunjin turns to leave while she is still trying to process the sale. He tells her the value depends on what he wants to buy, not how expensive it looks. Veli returns to her books, but she is clearly going to remember the customer who spent points that casually. Back outside, the Tower City looks peaceful again, but Sunjin's preparation is only beginning. He opens a dimensional pocket, basically a personal inventory that can store items safely. Sitting alone, Sunjin checks his list and feels confident he did not forget anything important. The items appear in front of him, giving him the tools he needs before climbing further. The system explains that learned skills grow stronger as proficiency rises through repeated use. One skill, Transformation, lets him mimic a target's physical ability within its current limits. Sunjin also checks a purple catalyst, since mana control is going to matter soon. The lowest grade mana catalyst is cheap and diluted, but it can still boost his current abilities. He reviews the item shop again, weighing simple supplies instead of wasting points on ego. Sunjin studies the bottle, knowing the effect matters more than the miserable quality. The taste is awful, but survival has never cared about flavor. Once the catalyst settles, he senses something nearby that pulls his attention immediately. A shadow falls beside the bench, and someone approaches before Sunjin can fully relax. A red-haired swordsman stops behind him carrying a present Sunjin remembers from another life. Sunjin turns sharply, startled by how familiar the stranger feels. The swordsman smiles casually, acting friendly enough to make the timing feel even stranger. Sunjin's reaction gives him away, because this is not just some random climber. In his memory, that same figure stands above piles of defeated monsters with terrifying strength. The image returns so clearly that Sunjin almost forgets which timeline he is standing in. A nervous smile forms as he realizes another important piece from the future has appeared early. The red-haired swordsman is Choi Hakjun, a name Sunjin remembers far too clearly. In the future, Hakjun becomes a terrifying figure who stands above defeated enemies without hesitation. That friendly face hides a much darker memory, and Sunjin knows this meeting is not random. Right now though, Hakjun just looks like a cheerful guy with a giant sword and suspiciously relaxed energy. Sunjin calls out to him, trying to confirm whether this really is the same person from his memories. He keeps his voice controlled, but finding Hakjun this early changes what he can do next. Hakjun answers with an easy smile, completely unaware of the future Sunjin remembers. Sunjin clenches his hand, weighing whether this strange encounter can become an advantage. Hakjun smiles wider, giving off the exact kind of confidence that makes people underestimate the danger. Sunjin swallows his nerves, knowing he needs Hakjun's potential without revealing why. Hakjun acts harmless enough to make the whole situation feel ridiculous, which somehow makes Sunjin more cautious. Inside the next trial, Sunjin takes the Charles clan treasure and immediately becomes the forest's biggest problem. The mission is simple on paper: escape with the treasure and survive the forest chasing him. The Charles clan notices the theft almost instantly, and one of them lets out a furious warning cry. Their hunters spread through the trees, tracking the stolen treasure before Sunjin can even settle in. Sunjin hears them moving below, and the entire forest starts turning into a trap. He waits high in the branches, letting the enemies search while he studies their numbers. The Charles clan looks up, and the quiet chase becomes a direct confrontation. Sunjin grips the treasure around his neck, understanding exactly why they are so desperate to get it back. The necklace is not just bait. It is the reward that can decide whether this floor is worth the risk. He watches their reactions carefully, confirming the clan will follow the treasure anywhere. That tells Sunjin he does not need to run forever, he can make them come to him. A hunter sniffs the air and tracks him down, proving the treasure works as both reward and curse. The first attack crashes in, forcing Sunjin to move before the clan surrounds him. He drops away from the strike using the forest height to buy space. The enemies keep pressing him, and Sunjin realizes this trial wants constant movement. He lands with a sharper focus, ready to turn the chase into his own hunting ground. The real objective becomes clear: clearing the forest is more useful than simply escaping it. A clan warrior rushes him from the side, trying to punish that decision immediately. Sunjin cuts through the pressure with clean movement, using skill instead of wasting strength. He launches through the enemies, and the system windows flash as his actions stack together. The fight starts clicking into place, with every movement bringing back more of his old rhythm. Hakjun's potential matters here, because Sunjin needs more than memory to survive harder floors. Sunjin thinks through the plan while keeping his breathing under control. Hakjun's talent gives him a path forward, but Sunjin still has to earn every step himself. He decides that borrowing potential is not enough unless he keeps building his own body too. Sunjin races through the forest, drawing more enemies in without letting them control the pace. A massive clan warrior drops in front of him, turning the chase into a boss-level problem. Instead of backing away, Sunjin smiles because this is exactly the kind of target he wanted. He moves straight through the opening, trusting his timing before the larger enemy can crush him. Mana gathers around him and his body pushes past its normal limit for one decisive burst. The attack lands cleanly, cutting through the boss before the rest of the clan can react. The second floor reward reveals the treasure's real value, a healing item with 5 uses. By the fire, Sunjin confirms his gamble worked better than running ever would have. His status shows real progress now, but the fatigue number proves the win was not free. The new leap skill gives him mobility, which matters more than flashy power on dangerous floors. The defeated boss lies nearby, confirming that Sunjin cleared far more than the trial expected. He starts thinking that if he can grow this fast, the future might finally become changeable. Then fatigue hits him hard and the system basically tells him his confidence needs a nap. Back in the real world, Sunjin returns home to a quiet apartment instead of another battlefield. He stands there for a moment, adjusting to how normal everything looks after the tower. Dinner is already waiting, and the warmth of it catches him more off guard than any monster. He reaches for the food slowly, still not used to being cared for like this again. His mother speaks to him casually, and Sunjin almost forgets how to answer like a normal son. Kim Soo-yeon smiles at him from the kitchen, alive, calm, and completely unaware of what he prevented. Sunjin lowers his gaze, feeling the weight of every future memory he cannot explain to her. They sit together at the table, and the simple meal becomes harder to face than the trial. He picks up the rice, but even eating feels strange after so many years of survival. The bite reaches his mouth, and the silence around him makes the moment feel painfully real. Sunjin's expression tightens as emotions he buried for years start moving again. He lowers his head, trying to hide how much this ordinary dinner affects him. His mother notices immediately, because even without the tower, she still reads him too well. She gently asks if he was really that hungry, and Sunjin quietly keeps eating. Later, Abyss Online explodes with posts about the second floor's mysterious first ranker. The article lists Kim Soo-yeon at 2230 points, meaning Sunjin's hidden strategy is already public gossip. Commenters argue over the ranking, shocked that the new first place is far beyond the expected score. At his computer, Sunjin sweats as he realizes the internet has noticed his mother's name. That attention creates a new problem because hiding the future is harder when the whole world starts watching. Sunjin scrolls through the reactions online and every click makes the ranking problem feel worse. The more people talk about Kim Soo-yeon, the more he realizes staying hidden will not be simple. He sits frozen at his desk, watching the internet turn his quiet plan into public bait. People are already saying guilds must be desperate to scout the mysterious first-place climber. Sunjin curses under his breath because the attention is becoming exactly the mess he wanted to avoid. Meanwhile in Gangnam, the Aries Guild is already moving faster than most people can react. Choi Hakshun brings up the first-place climber from the news, clearly interested in the name Kim Soo-yeon. The Aries Guild leader asks if Hakshun knows anything, and the room immediately turns heavier. Hakshun smiles like he has something useful, which is never comforting from a guy that confident. He leans back casually, but the older man is not treating this as a casual conversation. A hand lands on Hakchun's shoulder, reminding him that curiosity and orders are not the same thing. The pressure is quiet, but Hakshun understands the warning perfectly. He looks away with bored eyes, acting relaxed while clearly measuring how much he should say. The leader keeps his hand there, making sure the message does not need to be repeated. That small smile says he already suspects Hakchun is hiding more than he admits. The leader walks away, leaving Hakchun with one clear instruction not to forget. He knows Hakchun understands, and that makes the order feel even more like a test. Hakchun heads down the hallway thinking that winning over Kim Soo-yeon might be possible. Still, the way he was handled clearly annoys him more than he wants to show. His mind returns to the strange climber he saw before, the one who fought with unreasonable skill. Hakchun remembers enough to know that Kim Soo-yeon is not some lucky beginner. He walks past his reflection, quietly deciding this mystery is worth chasing himself. That thought settles into focus, because the first-place climber might become an ally or a problem. While others gossip, Sunjin perfectly clears the third floor and keeps moving without slowing down. The fourth floor falls next, stacking more achievement points onto a name already drawing attention. Back in the real world, university exam results arrive, proving normal life has not waited for him. The fifth and sixth floors are cleared in sequence and Sunjin's growth starts accelerating fast. At home, his mother sees him off with a gentle smile that keeps his reason for fighting alive. The ninth floor is cleared perfectly too, putting him one step away from a real turning point. Sunjin leaves home with his bag packed, moving forward as both student and climber. 1 year passes, and the boy who returned is no longer just trying to survive. The train carries him through the city, but Sunjin already thinks this route is too slow. He arrives at school, still wishing travel could move as quickly as the tower does. His steps stop on familiar ground where ordinary life and the coming future overlap. From the school rooftop, Sunjin looks out across a world that still has no idea what is coming. He knows the 10th floor matters because the tower changes sharply at floors 10, 20, and 30. Students pass around him normally, while Sunjin carries memories that would ruin every peaceful conversation. His fist tightens as the next disaster moves closer in his mind. He turns toward the future he already watched collapse once. The green dungeon that appears in about a year will become the start of a massive outbreak. Soon after, the Gyeonggi-do incident on New Year's becomes one of the futures he must erase. Sunjin raises his hand toward the sunset, letting the decision settle without needing anyone's approval. He promises himself that this time, he's going to change them. At the tower, the entrance to the 10th floor waits like the first real checkpoint of his second life. Sunjin approaches the gatekeeper knowing this floor will not be cleared by strength alone. The gatekeeper asks for one donation before he leaves, sounding shameless for someone guarding danger. Sunjin reaches out without arguing, already understanding how useful information can be here. He donates 5,000 achievement points and even the gatekeeper is caught off guard. That amount changes the conversation, turning a small request into something the gatekeeper cannot ignore. The gatekeeper looks at him with surprise, realizing this challenger is not treating the 10th floor lightly. His expression shifts from playful to uneasy, as if he suddenly feels responsible. He admits he cannot just let Sunjin leave after taking that much from him. The gatekeeper scratches his head, trying to decide how much warning he is allowed to give. From a distance, the two stand before the entrance while the final advice hangs in the air. Sunjin steps forward, accepting that the rest of the answer has to be found inside. The gatekeeper tells him to be careful as Sunjin walks into the light. The 10th floor opens into a cold, dark place that feels nothing like the earlier trials. The system announces that awakened Kim Soo-yeon's 10th floor trial is about to begin. It asks him to select a difficulty, and there is never any real doubt about his choice. Sunjin stands in silence, ready to gamble everything on the hardest path again. The air around him shifts as the forest and shadows begin forming the battlefield. The system confirms the 10th floor at level 10, placing him above a town hidden below. The trial tells him to find the purpose and clear it, then adds one final warning not to die. The 10th floor begins in a level 10 trial, with Sunjin dropped into a village under a dark sky. Nearby, a young girl quietly gathers red berries, unaware that the trial has already placed her in danger. She lights up over the berries, treating one small snack like it is treasure. For her, this forest is not part of a test, it is just where she survives. She happily eats another berry, and that tiny moment makes the floor feel strangely normal. Then her joy snaps apart as something moves in close enough to make her freeze. A huge salamander crawls out from the trees, turning the quiet forest into a threat immediately. The creature's roar shakes the area, and the girl has nowhere safe to run. She screams for someone to save her as the salamander charges straight toward her. The girl runs through the grass, but the monster keeps closing the distance behind her. Fear takes over her face as she realizes she cannot outrun it much longer. The monster nearly reaches her and the trial's first real consequence is about to land. Sunjin arrives at the last second, already preparing the skill he bought for moments like this. Transformation lets him borrow a target's physical talent, even if the cost is brutal on his stats. He activates it anyway, because hesitation would mean letting this child become the trial's first victim. Sunjin cuts through the attack and pulls the girl away before the salamander can crush her. The system confirms the huge salamander has been defeated, and Sunjin finally buys them breathing room. The girl clings to his back, terrified enough that words are still taking their time loading. Sunjin checks on her first because saving the village probably starts with understanding this child. He brings her back toward the village, where the empty streets feel colder than the forest. Sunjin tries to smile politely, but the response waiting for him is not exactly heroic applause. He knocks on a nearby door with the girl beside him, hoping someone will claim her safely. The girl speaks from behind the door, but the people inside sound more frightened than grateful. They warn him that taking the child hostage is meaningless, and there is nothing here worth stealing. Sunjin stands there stunned, realizing the villagers think he is a threat instead of a rescuer. He steps away from the door, scratching his head because this floor is already being weird. The reaction bothers him since normal villagers should not reject help this aggressively. From inside, the girl quietly watches him leave, still unsure whether she should trust him. The system finally explains that he has entered an unfamiliar village already caught in danger. Then the real mission appears, telling him to save the village and survive. Sunjin walks deeper into the village, taking the words survive more seriously than any reward. He quickly notices this floor is different, and the objective is not as simple as killing monsters. There has to be some meaning behind the village, or the tower would not be hiding the answer. He turns a corner, feeling eyes on him even though no one wants to show themselves. Villagers lurk behind windows and walls, watching him like a stranger who brought trouble with him. Sunjin keeps walking, pretending not to notice while their fear gives him another clue. Even if they are only trial residents, they act like people who have learned not to trust anyone. More villagers hide as he passes, refusing to help and refusing to be seen. Sunjin looks up at the sky, realizing this village feels less abandoned than cornered. He decides he needs time, because forcing answers out of scared people would only make this worse. The whole place feels like a world already closing in on its own ending. Instead of panicking, Sunjin smiles, because a messy trial still has rules he can figure out. He sits beneath a tree and lets out a long sigh while the village stays silent around him. A small presence approaches, and Sunjin notices the same girl watching him from a distance. Tiny feet stop near him, but she is still too nervous to come out fully. Sunjin looks up carefully, making sure he does not scare her away. The girl peeks from behind the tree, clearly wanting to speak but still afraid of being punished. She finally steps into view, and Sunjin gives her room to decide what she wants. She places berries into his hand, offering the only food she has as thanks. Sunjin stares at the gift, surprised by how sincere it is after the village rejected him. He accepts it gently, and the girl relaxes a little when he does not mock her. The berries sit in his palm, small enough to explain how desperate this village must be. She stays by the tree while Sunjin studies her, realizing she may be his first real lead. The girl speaks shyly, trying to ask whether the food is useful to him. Sunjin thinks it over, then decides kindness will work better here than interrogation. A small smile slips onto his face as he prepares something better than wild berries. He opens his pouch and pulls out food from his supplies. The moment she sees it, the girl's eyes light up like he just revealed a miracle. She bites into the bread with both hands, eating like she has not had a real meal in ages. Sunjin watches her reaction and quietly wonders how bad things are if bread tastes this legendary. They sit together under the tree and the village finally starts giving him a human answer. The girl explains that the villagers are struggling badly, which is why they begged for the village to be saved. Sunjin listens closely as the word hero comes up, connecting the mission to the village's belief. He realizes the background matters, and the child may understand more than the adults will admit. Sunjin leans back with a thoughtful smile, letting the girl keep eating while he pieces it together. The sky above the village stays heavy, reminding him that the danger has not disappeared. The girl keeps chewing happily, trusting him more with every bite. Sunjin's expression hardens when he admits he likes that kind of simple honesty. Before he can ask more, two adults approach and make the girl shrink back immediately. An old man smiles at them from the road, but the warmth on his face does not feel harmless. Sunjin recognizes him from old memories, the village chief he was once warned to be careful around. The chief greets him again with a calm smile that makes the whole situation feel colder. He continues speaking politely, but the pressure behind his words starts to show. Sunjin lowers his gaze as the chief warns him to rethink handing out food. The village chief returns with his assistant, and Sunjin immediately senses the warning in his calm stare. Sunjin shields the girl without moving, making it clear he is not handing her over just because they asked. The assistant reminds the chief that the village barely has enough food to last a few more days. From their side, Sunjin looks less like a rescuer and more like another stranger creating problems. Sunjin listens without rushing, realizing the hunger here is tied directly to the trial. The chief's expression stays controlled, but his patience is clearly thinner than he wants to admit. The girl panics when she hears that she was not even allowed to eat, and shame hits her instantly. Sunjin gently rests a hand on her head before that guilt can crush her. He tells her without making a scene that she did nothing wrong. The girl looks up at him, and that tiny kindness starts breaking through the village's fear. The chief watches the exchange closely, trying to decide what kind of person Sunjin really is. Sunjin opens his dimensional pocket and drops a full bag of supplies onto the ground. The assistant nearly jumps out of his skin, which is fair since food just fell out of nowhere. Sunjin offers the supplies anyway, proving he is not trying to exploit the village's desperation. He even adds that if the food is not enough, he can give them more. The chief pauses, forced to reconsider the stranger he was preparing to push away. Instead of thanking him openly, the chief offers Sunjin an empty house to stay in. Sunjin is caught off guard, since the sudden hospitality feels more tactical than warm. A loud gathering pulls his attention before he can ask what changed. Villagers crowd together in prayer, and the fear around them feels deeper than ordinary hunger. Sunjin watches carefully, realizing this village is hiding behind faith because it has no real solution. In his old world, people also started clinging to anything when the end felt close. Some begged, some preached, and some used belief as a shield against helplessness. The villagers here are doing the same thing, praying because panic needs somewhere to go. Sunjin's expression tightens, as he realizes religion may be covering the real purpose of this floor. He moves through the crowd quietly, listening for the fear beneath their prayers. When he hears what they are saying, even Sunjin struggles to hide his reaction. A red-robed figure raises a dagger, and the gathering turns from worship into something much darker. Sunjin looks down at his shadow, understanding that this is no harmless village ceremony. The rope speaker calls the villagers lambs, which is never a comforting way to start anything. A bound villager is thrown forward and the crowd accepts it like this horror has become routine. The red-robed worshipper stands alone over the trapdoor, treating the sacrifice like a sacred duty. Sunjin covers his mouth, finally seeing how badly fear has twisted this place. He walks away before the villagers notice him, already piecing together the trial's real structure. The people whisper that the village survived because of the mayor, but another sacrifice is due in 3 days. Sunjin keeps moving, and the question becomes whether the chief is saving them or controlling them. Behind the prayers, the villagers look less protected than trapped. Inside the chief's office, the assistant reports that Sunjin has not done anything suspicious yet. The chief writes quietly, but his silence makes the assistant even more uneasy. The assistant waits for an order, unsure whether Sunjin should be treated as guest or threat. The chief handles a strange green liquid, revealing another hidden piece of the village's system. He explains that the situation is growing more dangerous and a little more sacrifice may be required. The chief asks whether the assistant wants to save everyone, knowing that question corners people fast. The monster beneath the village is the reason everyone keeps giving up victims instead of fighting back. The village lives in constant panic, never knowing when the monster might invade again. The chief claims he has no other choice, but that answer does not make the choice clean. Outside, the sky over the village stays heavy while the next move begins in silence. Red-robed worshippers gather with torches, and the trial's hidden cult finally steps into view. Before Sunjin can confront them properly, one of the worshippers grabs him from behind. They drag him into their ritual space, treating him as the next offering without even asking first. Sunjin lands on the wooden floor, stunned more by their confidence than the fall. The worshippers surround him with torches, certain the sacrifice has already been decided. Their leader blocks the exit and says this is all for the sake of the village. Sunjin springs back to his feet, refusing to become fuel for someone else's desperate logic. Deep below, the giant serpent wakes, and the real monster behind the village finally shows itself. Someone approaches the cavern from above, following the trail toward the place nobody wants to discuss. The chief enters with a torch, expecting to find the same nightmare waiting below. He walks deeper into the cavern, and every step makes the silence feel more wrong. His foot stops suddenly, because the scene ahead is nothing like the ritual was supposed to create. The chief stares in shock, realizing the sacrifice has not gone the way anyone planned. Sunjin speaks from the shadows, calm enough to make the whole cavern feel colder. The serpent lies defeated behind him, and Sunjin stands there with the trial's real answer in his hand. The village chief stares at the defeated serpent, and the lie he built everything on starts cracking instantly. His face drains as he realizes Sunjin did not just survive the sacrifice. His hand trembles, because the proof is sitting right in front of him. Sunjin turns back quietly, already knowing the chief understands what this means. He asks if the chief really wants to keep pretending, and the cave becomes painfully silent. The chief can barely answer because Sunjin is standing where a dead sacrifice should have been. His teeth clench, but fear is doing a bad job hiding behind anger. Sunjin explains that if this snake had marked its territory properly, the village would not have suffered like this. He keeps pushing the logic, making the chief face the monster's behavior instead of his excuses. The chief stays frozen, and every second of silence makes his guilt louder. Sunjin explains that this kind of snake mostly sleeps after eating, nesting in one place until it moves on. The important detail is simple. It does not treat the person feeding it as prey. The chief finally understands Sunjin has figured out the entire system behind the sacrifices. Sunjin checks the evidence at his feet, confirming the serpent had been fed on purpose. The chief watches him closely, terrified of what Sunjin plans to reveal next. They leave the cavern behind, carrying the truth back toward the people who trusted him. The massive serpent remains in the cave, proof that the village's god was only a monster. When the villagers see it, their fear turns into confusion almost immediately. The serpent's body is brought into the village, and people start asking if the chief lied to them. One villager breaks down, realizing everything they believed came from the chief's words. The crowd struggles to accept it because blaming the chief means admitting they helped continue the horror. Someone finally asks Sunjin what they are supposed to do now. The question hangs over the crowd, and nobody looks ready for the answer. Sunjin walks away from the panic, already moving toward the next part of the trial. He reveals the snake eggs, which means killing one monster did not actually solve the village's problem. The villagers stare at the eggs in dread, realizing the next disaster is already waiting to hatch. Sunjin explains the feeding snakes trait, then tells them they can raise the baby snakes using that behavior. The villagers recoil at the idea, because trusting more snakes sounds completely insane from their side. Sunjin stands in front of them anyway, making it clear this is not a request for comfort. The plan is simple but brutal. They capture monsters and feed them to the baby snakes. The villagers panic at the word capture because fighting monsters is exactly what they have avoided. Sunjin folds his arms and tells them the truth without softening it. They can either take control of the danger or continue living as victims waiting to be chosen. The dark village sky seems to press down as everyone understands there is no easy third option. Sunjin says they can give up everything and keep feeding villagers to the snakes instead. The crowd flinches because he has turned their old survival method into something they cannot ignore. Sunjin sees the real issue clearly. They have no willingness left to protect themselves. The chief became a weak hero built from everyone else's fear and helpless wishes. The villagers whisper among themselves, still hoping someone else will choose for them. Sunjin thinks it over and realizes fear alone will not move these people forward. His eyes sharpen because the trial is testing whether the village can reclaim its own will. The little girl approaches him again, nervous but determined enough to step through the crowd. Sunjin turns to her and the village watches, the only person brave enough to speak. She admits she remembers people who tried to protect others before all of this happened. Her shaky laugh carries more courage than the adults have shown all night. She calls them people who did not run away from protecting others. Sunjin looks at her quietly, letting that simple statement reach the crowd without forcing it. He smiles because the smallest person in the village just found the answer first. The villagers stare at the girl, and her courage starts spreading where fear used to sit. A warm light rises around her, making the moment feel less like a speech and more like a turning point. One man swallows his fear, realizing that staying silent now means choosing the old way again. He steps forward and volunteers even though his voice is still shaking. Another villager joins in, saying he will try too because someone has to start. The assistant bows his head, finally choosing action over obedience to the chief's broken system. More villagers gather their courage, and the village begins changing one person at a time. A system window appears beside Sunjin, confirming the trial recognizes the shift. The villagers gain willpower and the completion rate jumps to 60%. Sunjin watches the number rise, knowing the village has taken its first real step. Now that their will has awakened, he tells them it is time to actually begin. Deep inside the cave, the next hunting ground waits in silence. Footsteps descend the stone stairs and the plan moves from words into danger. A large bird monster watches from below as the torchlight enters its territory. Its eye stays closed for only a moment longer, sensing the intruders before they speak. The monster's eye snaps open, and the first capture attempt begins under pressure. The chief stands with a lantern as the cave answers with glowing eyes from the dark. The trial field shakes as something huge tears through the forest, and the quiet hunt instantly becomes a crisis. The captured bird is tied down as bait, turning Su Yun's plan into a very risky monster trap. The two older participants barely finish catching their breath before they realize the real target is already coming. A massive red centipede-like monster rises from the trees, proving this floor is not done testing them yet. The predatory feeding snake charges straight in, and the ground basically gives up trying to stay solid. Su Yun reacts first, pulling his blade free while the monster commits to its attack. His slash cuts through the opening before the creature can adjust, turning its own momentum against it. The older men shout after him, finally understanding that the kid they followed is controlling the entire pace. Su Yun stops the fight there, deciding the setting sun makes it smarter to pause than overextend. He calls the others back, and even after that clean exchange, he treats the monster like unfinished business. The system confirms he has nearly cleared the 10th floor, but that last 10% is still waiting. With a tower of trials at 90% completion, Su Yun knows the floor has one final condition left. The wounded monster crouches in front of him, but it is not acting like the true final problem anymore. Su Yun steps forward and admits this is tougher than expected, which coming from him means the floor is serious. The ground begins to tremble under his feet, and the air changes before anyone can relax. The shaking spreads through the clearing, warning Su Yun that the real threat has finally noticed them. He freezes for a second, not from fear, but from recognizing a sign he did not expect this early. A blast crashes down beside him, missing by enough to feel intentional and rude. Blue flames twist upward from the impact, and Su Yun looks up as the sky itself becomes dangerous. The divine bird of blue ice appears, the one natural predator that can hunt the predatory feeding snake. The monster bird screams above them, and the whole trial suddenly stops feeling like a simple hunt. Su Yun realizes the bird came because of the bait, meaning his plan worked a little too well. The old guide figure from his knowledge comes to mind, almost laughing at how brutal this floor's ecosystem is. High in the sky, the bird circles with the confidence of something that has never been chased before. Its eyes lock onto the field below, and Su Yun understands it is choosing dinner. The divine bird dives, and its calm stare makes the entire battlefield feel smaller. The old guide's warning becomes painfully clear as the bird treats every creature below as prey. The bird rushes down to blue fire, almost asking the trial itself to serve the meal. The two men panic as the blue flames swallow the area, and none of this looks survivable from ground level. Su Yun pushes through the blast, frustrated that even his experience did not make this easy. He spots the bird's path and realizes the nearby village may become the next target if he fails here. Instead of retreating, Soo-yeon kicks off the ground and throws himself directly into the chase. The bird pulls away as he reaches for it, and for the first time the distance looks almost impossible. Soo-yeon keeps launching forward anyway, striking the ground to force more speed out of each step. He rises beneath the divine bird, turning a desperate leap into the start of an aerial pursuit. His blade cuts through the wind, but the bird's movement stays just beyond his reach. Soo-yeon's expression hardens as he calculates the gap, knowing raw effort will not be enough. He admits he cannot reach it yet, which only means he needs another way to close the distance. The bird dives back toward him, and that calm yellow stare makes the attack feel personal. Soo-yeon braces himself, realizing the bird is not just fast, it is reading his movements. The next rush clips through his defense and throws him off balance before he can counter. He falls upside down above the trees, bloodied, but still watching the bird instead of the ground. Even while falling, he refuses to accept that this is over. The bird glides away toward the village, and Soo-yeon understands that surviving is not the same as winning. His rope shifts around his body, giving him the one tool that can turn distance into opportunity. He grits through the pain and focuses, because there is no time to land safely and restart. Below, the older men stare in silence, realizing the boy is still trying to fight midair. One of them laughs nervously, asking if Soo-yeon is still young enough to believe monsters are simple. Soo-yeon grips the rope tighter, and the plan finally becomes clear. The older man assumes ordinary monsters would not scare a younger him, but this situation is anything but ordinary. Soo-yeon fires his blade into a stone pillar, anchoring himself before the fall can take control. The divine bird drops lower, forcing everyone nearby to understand just how massive the problem is. It stares down at them with no hesitation, almost offended that anyone tried to chase it. The two men look up and lose every bit of confidence they had left. Their faces say the same thing without needing words. This bird is way above their pay grade. As the bird surges forward again, their panic finally breaks into open shouting. Soo-yeon launches the rope-bound blade upward, turning his weapon into a hook instead of a strike. The rope whips around the divine bird, catching just enough to connect him to the monster. If he cannot reach the bird himself, Soo-yeon decides to make the bird drag him into range. He pulls himself along the rope, climbing through the air while the creature thrashes against him. At the worst possible moment, the transformation skill appears, offering a way to imitate a target's physical ability. Soo-yeon grabs the rope with blue energy burning around his hand, ready to use the bird's power against it. The sky erupts as he shoots forward, and the chase turns into a full collision between monster speed and human will. Back in the real world, the quiet outside makes the trial feel even more unreal. Someone answers a call inside the house, unaware of how close Soo-yeon came to disaster. Her voice stays light, but the story still has to return to the moment Soo-yeon was fighting for his life. Soo-yeon rockets through blue fire, dragging himself toward the divine bird before the creature can escape. The sky turns into a battlefield as he forces the bird's own speed to carry him forward. He immediately realizes transformation has limits, and copying power is not the same as mastering it. The skill only gives him a level 1 imitation, so the bird's full strength is still far above him. Even with that handicap, Soo-yeon keeps closing the gap and refuses to let the bird reach the village. He clamps down on the weapon and pours everything into one final pull. The power burns through him too fast, and his body starts paying for every second he borrowed. The copied heat becomes unbearable, turning his own skill into a punishment. The bird surges away again, and Soo-yeon gets thrown through the storm of blue flames. For one instant, his fear becomes simple, because dying here would make everything meaningless. The necklace from the villagers answers that fear with one desperate wish: save their home and survive. Soo-yeon remembers the villagers gave him this useless-looking keepsake, and suddenly it matters more than any weapon. The charm activates just before the flames finish the job, pulling him back from the edge. The pendant snaps free and shines through the sky, turning a small gift into his lifeline. Charles' treasure restores his injured body, and Soo-yeon gets one more chance to fight. With his body repaired, he charges at the divine bird again before the opening disappears. Soo-yeon drops straight down with both weapons raised, finally putting himself above the predator. His strike lands hard, cutting through the bird's defense and breaking its flight path. He forces out every bit of strength he has left, determined not to waste the villagers' trust. The divine bird crashes down from the sky, and the village walls shake under the impact. When the dust spreads, Soo-yeon is still standing while the monster lies broken in the crater. After everything, his body finally gives out and drops face first into the rubble. For a moment he lies completely still, the kind of still that makes everybody's stomach sink. A little girl sees him move and realizes the man who saved them is alive. Soo-yeon wakes up in bed screaming, which is fair after getting cooked by a legendary sky chicken. The villagers rush around him in panic, and the girl calls him Audrey like he just survived a bad nap. Everyone crowds the room, relieved and shocked that their savior is finally awake. Outside, the village has survived, but Soo-yeon's recovery still keeps everyone worried for a while. The older villagers explain that he has been unconscious long enough for the danger to pass. Soo-yun sits up with bandages around his neck, quietly taking in the fact that the trial is over. The villagers smile at him with so much gratitude that he honestly looks more uncomfortable than injured. The little girl throws herself into him, and Soo-hyun finally lets the moment soften. She cries into his chest, and the weight of what he protected settles in without any need for jokes. The system confirms the perfect clear, giving him first place and the highest achievement for the 10th floor. Soo-hyun thinks less about the score and more about the villagers who treated him like a real hero. The ranking calculation puts him in first place, which is impressive but also extremely embarrassing in public. He looks toward the others, realizing they are about to say goodbye. The villagers promise they will never forget him, and their gratitude turns the victory into something personal. Soo-hyun listens quietly, knowing this place may be a trial but the emotions were real. His shadow stretches across the floor as the exit pulls him away from the village. A glowing portal opens outside, ending the 10th floor whether he is emotionally ready or not. Soo-hyun walks toward the portal alone, carrying the reward and the memory of everyone he saved. He looks back and smiles, admitting that he has been caught leaving. The little girl runs after him, upset that he tried to disappear without warning. She reaches him with a small bundle in her hands, holding back tears while trying to stay brave. Her expression says she already knows he has to go even if she hates it. She offers him the gift with both hands, making sure he leaves with one last piece of the village. She tells him they will never forget him, no matter where or when they meet again. Soo-hyun turns back when she adds one more thing, and the farewell becomes even harder. She waves with a smile, choosing gratitude over sadness as he prepares to leave. Soo-hyun answers with a smile of his own, then steps into the light and returns to his world. Elsewhere, a car speeds through the city as another group moves on information about him. A red-haired young man rides in the back, already irritated by whatever news reached him. He listens closely to the call, and the name Kim Soo-hyun clearly changes the mood. The older man beside him studies his reaction, treating this as more than a simple report. The red-haired man laughs it off at first, but even he cannot ignore how strange Soo-hyun's record looks. He suggests Soo-hyun may become more than expected, and the conversation shifts from curiosity to caution. The red-haired man goes quiet, realizing this unknown climber might actually become a problem. The older man stays calm, but his warning carries the tone of someone who has seen talent turn dangerous. The red-haired man keeps listening, and his confidence starts looking a little less casual. The older man tells him to be careful if he meets Soo-hyun in the tower or at the examination hall. That warning lands harder than he wants to admit, especially when Soo-hyun is still supposed to be new. The suited man leans back like the matter is settled, but he clearly expects this meeting to happen. He adds that Soo-hyun could become someone worth supporting instead of challenging. The red-haired man stares ahead, unsettled by the idea that Kim Soo-hyun might already be that important. He repeats the thought of becoming Soo-hyun's backup, and the next problem quietly starts moving toward him. The red-haired hunter already understands that Kim Soo-hyun taking this exam as a substitute changes everything. Inside the car, the older man explains that Soo-hyun's name is now tied to the upcoming rank test. That information makes the red-haired hunter pause, because this substitute suddenly feels worth watching. At the Awakened Authority, the story shifts from tower survival into the official world of hunters. The red-haired hunter arrives first, carrying himself like the exam is barely worth his time. The older man tells him to finish the rank exam quickly, then come running if he has doubts. He clenches his teeth at the order, clearly not built for being handled by someone else. Still, he smiles through it, which is usually the face people make before causing paperwork. He looks up at the authority building, curious about the person he might meet inside. Even before entering, he lets out a sigh like this entire process already annoys him. While he heads in, Soo-hyun has already arrived at the same place without making a scene. Soo-hyun notices the red-haired hunter from a distance, but he keeps his attention on his own business. He checks his phone, using the moment to confirm where he needs to go next. For Soo-hyun, returning to the authority feels strange after everything he remembers from the future. The building represents the government side of Awakeners, where dungeon access begins with an official rank. At the reception desk, Soo-hyun gives his name and starts the process like any other applicant. To enter dungeons legally, every hunter needs to receive a rank from the authority first. Soo-hyun is guided into the waiting area, where other awakened applicants are already standing by. The test equipment checks physical ability and unique skills, turning talent into an official classification. Soo-hyun watches the staff and applicants calmly, even though the system looks painfully outdated to him. A staff member explains the process, while Soo-hyun plays the role of a quiet first-timer. The guide keeps talking, but Soo-hyun's attention shifts when the atmosphere nearby starts changing. A blonde applicant suddenly grabs a researcher, furious about whatever result the machine gave him. The staff member panics as the angry hunter pulls him in by the collar. The blonde man snaps, refusing to accept a low evaluation after showing up with that much pride. Soo-yeon turns toward the commotion, already measuring whether this is worth stepping into. The blonde hunter throws a punch at the researcher, making the whole room flinch at once. Before it lands, the red-haired hunter catches the attack and flips him like the problem was boring. The blonde man's wrist gets trapped, and the situation changes before his anger can go anywhere. The red-haired hunter smiles down at him, enjoying the chance to handle this personally. The blonde hunter curses him as an arrogant brat, which is bold for someone currently losing. He hits the floor hard, and his confidence drops faster than his rank score. The red-haired hunter smiles wider, showing that he is not even close to taking this seriously. He pins the man down with one hand, making the entire outburst look embarrassingly small. The blonde hunter explodes in anger, but anger alone is not enough to move him. The red-haired hunter claps his hands clean, while the staff scramble around the fallen applicant. After the mess settles, he walks away with a tired sigh and leaves the problem behind. Then he suddenly remembers why he came, and his mood shifts the moment he calls out. He spots Soo-yeon on the stairs and begins introducing himself like nothing violent just happened. Soo-yeon answers politely, though his expression says he already knows this guy is a headache. The red-haired hunter grins and tries to act friendly, but his energy is way too loud. He leans in close, acting casual while clearly testing how Soo-yeon responds. Soo-yeon checks his documents in silence, unable to say what he is really thinking about this man. The red-haired hunter keeps smiling, treating Soo-yeon like a new toy he just found. Then his expression sharpens and the friendliness starts feeling a lot more calculated. Soo-yeon senses something behind that smile, like the man is hiding real pressure beneath the jokes. The red-haired hunter sits down beside him and tells him to calm down. Soo-yeon can only watch as this guy makes himself comfortable right next to him. He keeps chatting from the side, while Soo-yeon tries to understand what his actual angle is. The red-haired hunter laughs it off, acting like he is just being sociable. Soo-yeon rests his hand against his face, already realizing this conversation will not end quickly. When Soo-yeon's expected rank comes up, the surrounding applicants react before he can even process it. The red-haired hunter is stunned too, and suddenly his casual attitude starts cracking. He covers his mouth, trying to hide how badly the result just threw him off. He asks for confirmation, because B rank this early is not something people casually walk into. Soo-yeon bends forward calmly, which only makes the red-haired hunter look more rattled. The red-haired hunter blurts out in surprise as Soo-yeon heads toward the test equipment. The staff warn that results can change, but Soo-yeon's presence already has the room focused. The red-haired hunter thinks that if things go the right way, he might be able to set Soo-yeon free. The machine identifies Kim Soo-yeon at 21, and the real examination finally begins. Soo-yeon steps deeper into the testing area, already planning to leave with a result that will not draw attention. He sighs outside the authority building, knowing this official exam is a different kind of battlefield. Even before the measurement starts, Soo-yeon looks tense because hiding strength is harder than showing it. The staff leads him into the testing room, while the other applicants watch the rumored name with curiosity. The researcher asks Soo-yeon to inject mana into the measuring tool, starting the test everyone came to see. Choi Hak-jun immediately notices something strange, and his casual expression finally disappears. Soo-yeon releases his mana into the device, carefully holding back enough power to avoid exposing himself. He keeps his face calm, but the amount of control required is clearly not normal. The machine reacts with a bright purple surge, showing just a glimpse of the power he is suppressing. The whole room is swallowed by the glow, and the applicants realize this is not an ordinary measurement. Choi stares in shock, sensing mana so absurd that the official result suddenly feels suspicious. The staff calls out Kim Soo-hyun as unaffiliated, and Choi asks if he is nervous. When the result comes out, Choi blurts in disbelief, because the number does not match what he just felt. A C-crank result appears, and Choi cannot understand how someone with that mana presence measured so low. The crowd slowly convinces itself that this must be a different Kim Soo-yeon with the same common name. The staff explains that Soo-yeon's awakened registration will be processed outside according to his results. Soo-yeon hears the reaction around him and realizes the rumor about his name is already spreading. Choi still watches him closely, wondering if the unimpressive result is hiding the real answer. He finally lets out a sigh, forced to accept that the official test says C-crank for now. Choi leans back and tries to act calm, even though the measurement clearly bothers him. Soo-yeon smiles awkwardly, hoping everyone accepts the easy explanation and moves on. He admits to himself that he barely regained control in time, and a mistake here would have been a disaster. Now that the test is over, Soo-hyun turns his attention back to the power he gained from the tower. Blue flame rises in his palm, proving that the Divine Bird's reward has already become part of his arsenal. The Divine Flames are especially useful against demonic monsters, and his stats have improved enough to matter. More importantly, clearing the 10th floor on the hardest difficulty unlocked a shop full of rare items. Out of every valuable option, Soo-yeon ended up buying an egg from an unidentified divine beast. He knows the choice is risky, But unidentified items bother him precisely because even he does not know them. In his past knowledge, someone used a divine beast hatched from an egg to rise all the way to A rank. After the test, Soo-yeon leaves the building, but Choi follows him instead of letting the mystery walk away. Soo-yeon notices the presence behind him and stops, already expecting another annoying conversation. Choi catches up outside the authority, turning the quiet exit into a direct confrontation. He faces Soo-yeon with a smile, trying to sound casual while clearly fishing for answers. Soo-yeon watches him carefully, waiting to see whether this is curiosity or recruitment pressure. Choi says he hopes Soo-yeon does not mind the question, but that opening is never as harmless as it sounds. Before Choi can continue, the angry blonde applicant storms toward them and shouts from across the plaza. Soo-yeon notices the man charging in and immediately wonders if this guy is trying to start trouble. Choi turns with mild interest, almost impressed that someone picked the worst possible moment to interrupt. Soo-yeon decides to watch first, since the situation may reveal more about Choi than another conversation would. The blonde applicant loses his temper completely, and the air around him turns aggressive. He stumbles forward coughing, while Choi and Soo-hyun both notice something else moving behind him. A hand presses against the man's back, and a strange green energy locks his body in place. The one controlling him is Jung Dong-young, a composed older man who clearly outranks the problem. Jung Dong-young restrains the applicant with one calm motion, ending the outburst before it can spread. Choi recognizes the pressure immediately, and the word guild tells Soo-hyun this is no random bystander. The angry applicant is sent away like an inconvenience, while Jung Dong-young barely looks bothered. Soo-hyun's attention sharpens as soon as he realizes who has stepped into the conversation. Jung Jong-in appears in full view, and even his arrival feels designed to announce authority. The blonde applicant hits the ground hard, and the plaza goes quiet around him. Soo-hyun narrows his eyes, understanding that this man's timing was too perfect to be coincidence. Jung Jung places an arm around Choi like a handler collecting someone who wandered off. His expression stays controlled, but his eyes make it clear he already knows plenty about Soo-hyun. Choi tries to laugh it off, suddenly looking much less in control than he did a few minutes ago. Soo-hyun answers from a distance, keeping his tone polite while measuring both men at once. Jung Dong-young studies him with a careful smile, treating this meeting like a business opportunity. The three stand outside the authority, and the conversation shifts from test results to guild politics. Choi raises his hands behind Jung, pretending innocence while clearly enjoying the awkward pressure. Soo-hyun listens without reacting, letting the older man reveal why the guild is approaching him now. Choi signals for quiet, as if even he knows Jung Dong-young should be the one speaking here. Soo-hyun smiles faintly, recognizing that they are trying to evaluate him through friendliness instead of force. Jung Dong-young turns away first, leaving Choi behind him and giving Soo-hyun space to consider the offer. Soo-hyun's smile deepens because the C-crank result has not stopped important people from noticing him. He looks down with a quiet confidence, knowing this new connection may open the next path forward. Soo-hyun smiles because the guild approach is exactly the kind of opening he wanted to find. Jung Dong-young calls his name directly, while Choi Hak-chun suddenly looks like he forgot how to stand normally. Jung speaks with a calm confidence that makes the conversation feel less like a greeting and more like an inspection. His smile stays polite, but Soo-hyun can tell this man is used to controlling the room. Soo-hyun answers with the same easy smile, refusing to show how much he already knows. Choi blurts that he was the evaluator, then immediately tries to hide it like the secret left without him. Jung turns toward Choi, and that small movement is enough to make the air tighten. His stare reminds Choi exactly who is in charge here, even without raising his voice. Kwai freezes under the pressure, suddenly much quieter than the man who was joking earlier. Soo-hyun receives his awakened identification card, officially marked as C-crank under the authority system. Jung studies the card with interest, clearly not accepting a printed rank as the whole truth. He returns it to Soo-hyun, but the way he watches him says the evaluation is still continuing. Soo-hyun reads the situation calmly, waiting for Jung to reveal what he actually wants. Jung points him out directly, making it clear this conversation is no longer about Choi. He starts walking away, leaving the invitation hanging in the air instead of explaining everything up front. Soo-hyun thinks about Jung's guild, and the name carries more weight than a normal recruitment offer should. In his memory, Jung Jong-young is not just a successful guild leader, but a dangerous awakened with a violent reputation. Soo-hyun remembers how people around Jung could end up ruined, and how casually that danger was treated. Jung's power and influence made him frightening in more ways than one. Back in the present, Soo-hyun weighs that history before deciding how much distance to keep. Jung gestures like he is offering opportunity, but Soo-hyun knows opportunity can come with chains. Among awakened fighters, there is an unwritten rule that outsiders should not interrupt their conflicts. That rule becomes terrifying when a fight goes too far and everyone nearby still hesitates to step in. Young's guild had enough force to walk into those moments and decide what happened next. With enough power and connections, even serious incidents could be buried before they reach the surface. That kind of protection is exactly why most hunters would be tempted by Jung's offer. Suyin answers calmly, making it clear that not everyone is desperate enough to accept any hand reaching out. Jung watches him walk past, and the silence between them says the rejection did not go unnoticed. As Jung leaves, Choi is left standing there awkwardly with no idea how to save the mood. Choi tries to laugh it off, but even he knows the conversation just got heavier than expected. Suyin passes him without stopping, ending the meeting before either of them can ask too much. Choi suddenly notices something left behind, and his attention snaps down to his hand. Suwon has slipped him contact information, turning the awkward encounter into a quiet invitation. He walks away with a faint smile, letting Choi decide whether he wants to follow that thread. Jung and Choi leave the authority together, but their relationship already looks less simple from the outside. Suyen watches them go, focusing less on the guild and more on what Choi Hakstrun might become. Jung Dong-young is already an A rank awakened, which means approaching him carelessly would be a bad mistake. Later, Suwayan searches through records in his room, trying to confirm what changed in this timeline. The information says Jung was once tied to the underworld before becoming a guild leader. His past includes serious organized crime, which explains why his guild feels more like power than protection. Suyin also remembers that Jung recently handled someone with no hesitation, even in front of witnesses. That makes Jung useful, dangerous, and exactly the kind of person Suyun cannot ignore. Choi Hakjun is different, because Suyun knows the man has the potential to stand at the center of future battles. The problem is that nothing around Choi looks simple, especially with Jung already close to him. Suyan studies both men in his mind, trying to understand what kind of link formed between them. After digging through the information, he leans back and lets the pieces settle for a moment. Then he notices the snow outside, and the calm weather pulls his thoughts somewhere darker. In the future, the world grew colder and quieter as the end approached, with disasters stacking up one after another. Suyin stares at the snowfall and realizes the present is still peaceful only because the real collapse has not started. A sudden thought hits him, and his expression changes before he can even move. He rushes back to the computer, chasing the memory before it slips away. The authorities' ranking system was built to keep awakened activity stable, especially around dungeon access and team safety. The database shows ranked hunters listed like pieces on a board, each one tied to what they are allowed to enter. Suayen searches faster, looking for the exact requirement hidden inside the rules. When the result appears, he stares at the screen in pure disbelief. The discovery throws him so hard that even his chair gets dragged into the drama. He pulls himself back in, realizing the rule he found could change what he does next. The meeting with Jung and Choi flashes through his mind, and suddenly their timing feels too useful to ignore. Suyun begins to understand the shape of the opportunity sitting right in front of him. He smiles to himself because the C-Crank result may have accidentally handed him the perfect next move. Suyun's next move begins at a cafe, where a small dungeon party is trying to finish its roster. The team already has An Min-sok, a C-Crank hunter with enough dungeon experience to be reliable. Kim Yen is there too, another C-Crank hunter who has cleared dungeons several times before. Yuan sighs at the paperwork, clearly unimpressed by the kind of people they have been finding. She calls most applicants mediocre loners, which is harsh but not exactly subtle. From her view, the team matters because weak members can turn even a simple dungeon into trouble. Lee Joho leads the discussion, and his B-rank status makes him the strongest person in the room. Even with his confidence, Joho says they still need one more member before entering. Their deadline is closing fast, so waiting around for the perfect candidate is no longer realistic. A message arrives while they discuss it, reminding them that an orange dungeon should be manageable. Yoon sees the application and offers to take the new applicant, mostly to solve the numbers problem. Joho stops at the word useful, realizing this applicant may be more important than expected. The application is for the Gwangju dungeon, and the name attached to it is Kim Soo-yoon. The message confirms that an awakened named Kim Soo-hyun wants to participate in the Gwangju dungeon. Dungeons are divided by color, and the closer the color gets to violet, the more dangerous it becomes. Orange dungeons are near the bottom, so a mostly C-Crank's team should usually clear one without much difficulty. That confidence carries into the forest, where Soo-yun steps toward his first official dungeon party. On January 1st, Soo-yun arrives in Gwangju with the calm face of someone hiding a much bigger plan. The party is already waiting near the gate, and Joho greets him like the missing piece finally arrived. Soo-yun accepts the handshake politely, keeping his real strength hidden behind the role of a new C-Crank. Joho starts introducing the party, making sure Soo-yun understands who he will be entering with. The moment they hear his name, the whole group reacts at once. One member connects him to the Kim Soo-yun currently famous in the Tower of Trials. Joho tries to keep the introductions moving, but the rumor has already grabbed everyone's attention. To them, the name brings up that strange tower climber everyone has been hearing about lately. An Min-sok accepts the explanation, but he is still clearly curious about the coincidence. Soo-yeon quietly checks his weapon, knowing his current public skill level is exactly where he wants it. The group decides he is just a beginner with the same name, which is the easiest answer to believe. Kim Baek-yoon watches him with crossed arms, not fully convinced but not pushing the issue yet. Yen points out that he is still the same C-Cranks user they approve for the party. Baek-yoon lets the issue go for now, and the group moves back toward the actual dungeon. Yan steps in to keep the introductions from turning into a name debate. Before entering, the party goes over the basics one more time at the dungeon entrance. Yin introduces Kim Baek-yoon as someone connected to Lee Jo-ho and experienced enough for the team. Soo-yeon answers carefully, trying not to make his knowledge of these people too obvious. Kim An-min introduces herself as the team's healer, which immediately makes Soo-yeon pay attention. Her gentle greeting reminds him of the past, though she clearly has no idea what he remembers. An-min asks about the person standing alone, and Soo-yeon notices the hooded member staying apart. The hooded fighter keeps his distance, giving the group a quiet problem nobody seems ready to explain. Someone says there are personal reasons behind it, and Soo-yeon decides not to force the answer yet. He studies the team's mood, realizing this simple party already has more tension than expected. Jo-ho announces that they will enter now, and everyone gathers near the dungeon gate. Before they go in, he reviews the ground rules and reminds them to follow orders inside. Soo-yeon listens silently, but his real focus is on what this dungeon means for the future. His memory cuts forward to the disaster he is trying to prevent, where everyone here eventually dies. News from the ruined future reminds him that dungeons were only the beginning of a much larger collapse. Even monsters outside normal land routes became part of the crisis, spreading danger in places people never expected. The blue dungeon that appears later will be the first warning that the rules are changing. Soo-yeon remembers that several names in the future records disappear, and this party is connected to that tragedy. To stop it, he needs to identify the criminal and understand what really happened in this dungeon. For now, his goal is simple: clear the dungeon while gathering the proof needed to change that future. When the team asks if he understands the rules, Soo-yeon answers without hesitation. Jo-ho tells everyone not to be nervous, trying to keep the party steady before the gate opens. Inside, the dungeon looks ordinary enough, which makes the team relax almost immediately. An Min-sok also treats it casually, expecting the usual low-level monsters for an orange dungeon. He explains that even if monsters appear, they should be basic beasts like wolves. The party suddenly freezes because the monster in front of them is absolutely not a wolf. A huge one-eyed creature raises its club, and the dungeon's safe reputation collapses in one swing. Soo-yeon stares at it, realizing this should not be possible inside an orange dungeon. The monster slams down hard, forcing everyone to understand that the dungeon difficulty has changed. An explosion tears through the forest, and the party's first step becomes a fight for control. Golden fire twists through the air as Soo-yeon prepares to answer the impossible monster with his own power. The Cyclops swings first, and the party immediately learns this orange dungeon is not playing by orange dungeon rules. Soo-yeon stares at it in disbelief, wondering how something this strong appeared in a low-grade gate. The club smashes into the ground, forcing everyone to scatter before the first mistake becomes fatal. The party barely dodges through the dust, and their clean little dungeon run falls apart in seconds. Soo-yeon realizes a Cyclops appearing here is not just unlucky, it means the dungeon itself is abnormal. The creature towers over them, turning the entire cavern into a boss room nobody signed up for. A level-up notice appears, giving Soo-yeon the first clue about what kind of dungeon they entered. He recognizes the pattern as a level growth dungeon, where the danger rises instead of staying fixed. That means the dungeon is still evolving, and waiting around will only make the situation worse. Lee Jo-ho orders everyone to regroup, trying to keep the party from collapsing into panic. Soo-yeon steps into the center, already thinking past survival and toward the dungeon's hidden reward. The others stare at him, confused by how calm he looks in front of a monster that should not exist. Kim Yen snaps at everyone to escape, because from her view staying here is pure madness. Soo-yeon says the dungeon reward matters, but Yeon is more focused on keeping everyone alive. Before the argument can continue, Soo-yeon notices the Cyclops shifting its attention to the wrong side. The monster charges again, turning a bad formation into an immediate disaster. Soo-yeon curses under his breath, realizing the Cyclops has locked onto the weaker side of the party. The club comes down hard, and the entire team feels how little room they have for mistakes. Lee Jo-ho takes the impact head-on, using his rank and experience to stop the attack from spreading. Soo-yeon recognizes Jo-ho's strength right away, because blocking that blow is not normal C-Crank's work. Jo-ho buys everyone a moment, but even that effort proves the gap between him and the Cyclops. He swings back with everything he has, trying to force the monster away from the rest of the group. The attack lands, but the Cyclops pushes through it far too easily. Soo-yeon understands the truth immediately. Jo-ho is strong, but still nowhere near enough for this monster. The counterattack throws Joho down, and the party's one reliable wall breaks in front of them. Panic spreads as everyone realizes a B-rank hunter fell from a single exchange. Joho forces himself back up, trying to stay conscious long enough to keep the team from scattering. Baekhyun looks over in shock, finally understanding that running might not even be possible anymore. Soo-yeon moves before anyone else can hesitate, stepping between the Cyclops and the injured Joho. Joho answers that he is fine, but the relief on his face says Soo-hoon's timing saved him. Soo-yeon meets the next swing directly, turning the Cyclops away from the fallen party leader. His blade flashes with blue power and the monster finally reacts to someone dangerous. The impact sends force through the cavern, making the others realize Soo-yeon has been hiding far more than his rank. Yeon and the others stare in shock, because the quiet C-Crank substitute is suddenly holding the front line. Soo-yeon asks how long they plan to stand there, pulling them back into the fight before fear settles in. The Cyclops pauses for a second, confused that the weakest-looking hunter is now the biggest threat. The hooded member finally steps forward, quietly joining the formation when the party needs every hand. Soo-yeon gathers the team around him, shifting them from survival panic into a real battle plan. Joho accepts that Soo-yeon's judgment is right even if nobody understands who he really is yet. Kim Yoon-min braces herself, while the others prepare to handle the smaller monsters closing in. Yen notices the change in Soo-yeon's presence, and the question on her face says plenty. Soo-yeon tells them they have to fight if they want any chance of escaping. Joho reacts in disbelief, but the monsters already surrounding them make the answer obvious. He grits his teeth and accepts it, because leadership now means trusting the person who can actually move. Soo-yeon orders everyone to get it together, snapping the party out of the fear before it spreads again. His eyes sharpen as he prepares to clear the field without exposing every secret he has. The party spreads out and begins cutting down the weaker monsters, finally taking back some control. Soo-yeon realizes the small monsters are still orange dungeon level, so only the Cyclops is truly abnormal. That means he can remove the distractions quickly, as long as he controls the amount of power he uses. He remembers that a Cyclops has a weakness, but not the obvious eye everyone thinks about first. The Cyclops tries to crush him again, and Soo-yeon uses the swing to read the monster's habits. Its grip on the club is too tight, which tells Soo-yeon the weapon is protecting something important. He lands on the club itself, turning the monster's attack into a path straight toward the answer. Standing above it, Soo-yeon confirms that the real target is hidden exactly where he expected. He drives his blade down, aiming not at the face but at the hand holding the club. The strike hits right where it needs to, forcing the Cyclops to lose the protection it was clinging to. Soo-yeon explains that the monster grips the club so tightly because it is guarding its true weak point. The hidden eye in the palm is the real weakness, and hitting it can end the fight much faster. Soo-yeon follows through before the Cyclops can recover, striking the exposed spot with clean precision. He watches the result closely, making sure the attack actually reaches the core of the monster's defense. Meanwhile, Yoon and Yoon-min support the others, clearing the remaining monsters with coordinated attacks. Joho confirms their side is safe, and the party finally gets a moment to breathe. Soo-yeon stands in the dust with his sword lowered, appearing to have ended the impossible fight. Then the Cyclops moves again, and Soo-yeon realizes the battle is not over yet. The monster smiles beneath him, stunned that this human almost defeated it but still ready to continue. Soo-yeon stands over the Cyclops, and the monster finally realizes something about this C-Crank makes no sense. He presses the attack before it can recover, using the Cyclops itself as his foothold. The monster tries to shake him off, but Soo-yeon has already found the rhythm of its movements. He strikes down again, forcing the Cyclops to defend instead of swinging freely. Lee Joho watches in shock, because Soo-yeon is doing what the whole party could not manage. The others panic at first, unable to understand why the so-called beginner is fighting like this. Kim Yen steadies herself, realizing their best chance is not running anymore but supporting him. The Cyclops unleashes another blast, and the cavern lights up with a force that could wipe out the formation. Joho sees the attack coming and understands exactly how bad it would have been if it hit the group. Soo-yeon lands safely through the smoke, having dodged the blast by copying just enough of the monster's movement. He admits that could have gone badly since even his borrowed power is still dangerous to handle. The transformation skill confirms the new target, letting him mimic the Cyclops and amplify his regeneration. Soo-yeon hits the ground hard but stays moving, using the skill's boost before the monster can reset. He checks his hand and confirms the copied ability is stabilizing faster than before. The Cyclops' power adds another layer to his borrowed abilities, making his body tougher in the middle of battle. That result is exactly what he expected, and his confidence returns the moment the gamble works. Joho runs toward him, still trying to understand whether Soo-yeon is injured or simply terrifying. Before Joho can finish asking, Soo-yeon launches away again and leaves only a trail behind. Joho looks up at the speed, finally accepting that Soo-yeon has been hiding far more than a rank. Su-yun charges straight into the lesser monsters, clearing the path before they can swarm the party. The creatures drop into the cavern from above, turning the fight into a wave instead of one enemy. Su-yun crashes through them first, cutting down the front line before the team gets surrounded. He lands with red energy burning around him, choosing control over showing off. The Cyclops slams down again, trying to crush him before he can keep pressuring the weak point. Su-yun appears beside it and asks where it is looking, making the monster's slow reaction look painful. His next strike lands clean, forcing the Cyclops back while Joho watches from the side. Joho stares at the exchange, realizing this is not luck or a temporary burst. Su-yun keeps moving around the Cyclops, staying just outside the monster's reach. Joho barely avoids another swing, and the fight reminds him how dangerous this dungeon still is. He calls for Yu-1, trying to keep the rest of the party from losing formation again. Su-yun looks back and checks everyone's position because the monster is not the only threat here. The Cyclops attacks again, but Su-yun is already reading the angle before the club fully moves. The monster roars in frustration as its attacks keep missing the person standing closest to danger. Su-yun's counter burns through the cavern, pushing the Cyclops past the point where it can keep control. The impact breaks through its defense, and the monster finally begins to collapse. With bodies scattered around the cave, Joho says they still do not know where the exit is. He also warns that more monsters could appear, meaning victory over the Cyclops does not end the dungeon. Su-yun agrees that they are safe for now and tells the team to rest while they can. Joho approaches him carefully, trying to ask the question everyone is thinking. Su-yun cuts the tension with the official answer, reminding him that he is still registered as C-Crank. He admits he overdid it during the emergency, but his awkward smile does not make the explanation believable. Kim Yunemin hurries over to help, pulling the conversation away from suspicion before it can grow sharper. Her healing tool glows as she moves to treat Su-yun's injuries, even though he barely looks bothered. Su-yun politely stops the healing, acting like the wounds are not serious enough to waste her strength. From the side, the others regroup while the party tries to understand what just happened. Su-yun quietly notes the real problems. Min-sok is scared, Yunmin is easy to pressure, and one member remains unknown. Joho turns toward Yun and points out the two people who still need close attention. Yun brushes herself off, embarrassed but steady enough to keep moving. The team watches the healer and Su-yun speak, and the silence shows nobody has a clean answer yet. Su-yun smiles to himself because this messy party is starting to reveal exactly what he needed to know. The Cyclops suddenly starts trembling, proving the monster is not finished causing trouble after all. Its body shakes violently, and everyone realizes the dungeon may be shifting again. Su-yun's expression sharpens as he recognizes what the system is about to let him keep. He remembers that transformation has now touched multiple characteristics, including the divine bird's blue fire. More monsters rush in, forcing the party to stop thinking and fight again. The creatures spread across the cavern, but this time, the team is ready instead of frozen. Su-yun's flames cut through the wave first, opening space for the others to move. Joho calls for everyone to work together, finally turning the scattered group into a proper party. Yen grips her sword and looks toward the next threat, no longer waiting for Su-yun to do everything. After the wave falls, the team stands among the defeated monsters and prepares to finish the dungeon. Yen catches her breath, shaken by how close they came, but still determined not to fold. Yunmin smiles beside Su-yun, relieved that they survived the worst of the ambush. She explains that a monster giving even B-rank awakeners trouble is nothing to be ashamed of. Her calm reaction briefly changes the mood, making the cave feel less hopeless. Then Yunmin notices something in Su-yun's response, and her expression turns more curious than relieved. Su-yun answers lightly, careful not to give away more than he already has. A footstep cuts into the conversation, and Joho steps forward to bring everyone back to the mission. He faces Su-yun directly, quietly acknowledging that the party now has to follow the person who understands this dungeon. Su-yun tells them to move, and Yunmin looks at him like she is seeing the real leader for the first time. Joho watches in silence, still processing how completely the C-Crank's newcomer changed the battle. Su-yun's eyes sharpen again, because clearing this dungeon is only the first step toward uncovering the truth. After surviving the Cyclops, the party keeps moving through the dungeon before another wave can trap them. The group stays close together now, because everyone finally understands this place is not a normal orange dungeon. Lee Joho leads with his phone light, trying to keep the team focused instead of afraid. Kim Yen stays beside him, but even she can tell the party's confidence has taken a hit. Joho studies the path ahead, clearly looking for an exit before the dungeon changes again. He admits he has a question, because the deeper they go, the less this dungeon makes sense. Yun reacts first when the air shifts and the team realizes something is opening ahead. A huge door appears in the cavern, and it feels less like an exit than something waiting for them. The party gathers in front of it, unsure whether they found freedom or the next problem. Su-yun watches the door quietly, already suspecting the dungeon has not finished testing them. Light leaks through the opening, and the mood changes before anyone can celebrate. The door reveals a massive stone hall, pulling the entire party into a new stage of the dungeon. Min-sok looks up and asks the obvious question, wondering if this is really where they are supposed to be. Kim Baek-yoon reacts with the same confusion because an exit should not look this suspicious. Then the far door appears with golden light behind it, making everyone think they may have found the way out. Min-sik starts rushing forward, desperate enough to believe the first hopeful thing he sees. Their footsteps echo across the stone floor as the party moves toward the glowing door. Before they reach it, the dungeon system activates and stops them cold. The system welcomes the travelers and announces that the dungeon trial is about to begin. Soo-yoon looks up at the message and his expression says this is exactly the kind of twist he expected. The first message asks them to save the village and survive, turning the dungeon into a formal trial. The system offers 2 passing trials, one where they fight monsters and one where they run from them. It gives them 10 minutes to choose, warning that the trial will be chosen randomly if they hesitate. Yen snaps at the system, frustrated that it can simply decide the rules however it wants. Yoonmin reads the options carefully, realizing both choices are dangerous in completely different ways. Minso calls someone for help, but the dungeon is already past the point where outside answers matter. Yen shuts down the arguing, knowing panic will waste the little time they have left. Johoho thinks through the choices, trying to decide which one gives the party the better chance. He turns towards Soo-yeon because after the Cyclops fight, ignoring his opinion would be stupid. Soo-yeon stays calm under everyone's stare, already seeing the hidden problem behind the 2 trials. Joho's eyes sharpen, waiting to hear whether Soo-yeon sees something the rest of them missed. Yi-yoon argues that less than 10 minutes remain, so the party needs to decide fast. The others face Soo-yoon too, quietly accepting that his judgment now matters more than his rank. Yu struggles with that shift, because handing the lead to a newcomer still feels unnatural. Suwon answers with confidence, and the room goes still around him. The others react in shock when he chooses the harder-looking option instead of the escape trial. Soo-yoon points toward the first door, deciding they should fight rather than run. Yen repeats the other option in disbelief because running away sounds safer on the surface. Soo-yeon explains that monsters chasing from behind could split them apart and make the weakest members easy targets. Joho understands the point, but he still worries that fighting endless monsters could drain them just as badly. He weighs the argument carefully, knowing either choice could break the team if they handle it wrong. Finally, Joho decides they will follow Soo-yeon's call and take the first trial. The party commits together and the system accepts their choice before anyone can back out. The dungeon system confirms the first trial, giving them 30 seconds before the monster fight begins. A pillar of light erupts in the hall, and the trial starts building the battlefield around them. Monsters begin pouring through the door, armed and organized enough to make the party tense immediately. More creatures flood in behind them, proving this will not be a small cleanup fight. Someone shouts that they are coming, and the party tightens formation before the wave crashes in. Johoho raises his weapon first, forcing himself back into leader mode despite the pressure. He cuts into the first monster, buying the others enough space to start moving. A counterattack slips through and catches him off guard, reminding everyone this trial will punish sloppy timing. Soo-yeon moves instantly, closing the gap before the monster can finish the opening. He ducks under the strike, already reading the creature's path before it lands. His blade flashes through the monster, and the front line finally regains control. Soo-yeon's focus sharpens, because this is not only a fight, but a chance to watch the party's reactions. Yoonamin supports the group with healing magic, while the others brace against the next rush. Yoon and Baekhyun push back together, showing the party can hold formation when fear is under control. The next wave slams into them, but this time the hunters answer as a team instead of scattering. Soo-yeon lands at the center of the broken floor and says it is about time. Somewhere in the pressure of the trial, the hidden question becomes whether people will protect each other or themselves. The party keeps fighting, but every swing now reveals who can stay calm when survival gets ugly. Joho looks towards Soo-yeon and starts to realize the trial may be exposing more than monsters. Yeonmin trembles behind her staff, feeling the strange darkness spreading beneath the surface. The far door glows again, and a new figure appears beyond the light before the party can recover. Purple threads drop from above as the figure descends, and the real danger finally enters the hall. The first row gate slams shut, and the group's easy escape disappears right in front of them. Soo-yeon and the others stare in shock, realizing this was not some random accident. The scared challengers are thrown off balance, with everyone suddenly dragged into a much worse situation. Akjun immediately snaps, demanding to know who opened the gate and ruined the trial. Even the people who looked confident a second ago are now scrambling to understand what just happened. The monsters are pulled away from the first route, which means the dungeon itself is changing the rules. The remaining monsters vanish from the battlefield, leaving everyone confused instead of relieved. A system window confirms the worst part: the first route has been forcibly closed. Now they only have 10 minutes before the second route starts, and a new goal is simply escaping alive. The red-haired challenger panics first, since nobody knows who triggered this disaster. She quickly points out the obvious problem. They are already tired and cannot handle stronger monsters. The second route is supposed to be harder and their health and mana are already running low. She warns that anyone who enters now is basically walking straight into a trap. Suyun steps forward calmly, and that calm makes him stand out even more than the chaos. The blonde challenger immediately loses his patience, acting like Suyun is making the situation worse. The whole party freezes around him, waiting to see whether he has an actual plan or just confidence. Suyun's earlier movements start to make sense, since he has been guiding the trial instead of reacting to it. The timer keeps dropping, and now there are only 3 minutes left before the second route begins. The blonde challenger still refuses to understand, but Suyun already sees the real choice in front of them. Suyun tells them they are going to die anyway unless they at least try to move. The red-haired woman goes quiet, because she understands that fear is no longer helping anyone. Hakun steps in and backs Suyun's logic, forcing the group to stop arguing and start moving. He tells the complainers they can stay behind if they want, but survival means following Suyun's call. The red-haired woman finally regains control and tells everyone to focus on getting out alive. Even the blonde challenger gets pulled into the plan, although he looks like teamwork personally offended him. Kim Dae notices Suyun by the gate, and her reaction gives away that she did not expect this. Suyun stands in the open and makes it clear that staying behind is also part of the plan. The others are stunned because he is not just risking himself, he is choosing the most dangerous position. Suyun confirms it without hesitation, as if remaining inside with monsters is completely normal. That answer hits the group hard, since nobody can tell whether he is brave or just insane. Kim Dae stays on the floor, shaken by the fact that Suyun is paying attention to her specifically. For a second she looks small and confused, like the confident mask is starting to crack. Suhan calmly speaks to her, while she desperately tries to act like nothing is wrong. Dane suddenly reacts, realizing Suyun has already seen through more than she wanted him to. Lee Joho heads toward the gate, preparing to leave the second route behind. Suhin tells Joho to take the others with him, while he handles what remains inside. Joho accepts and steps through the gate, trusting Suyun even when the choice looks reckless. Hakujun remembers Suyun's warning and decides to follow that plan without wasting another second. Danger had two eyes, and that the Danger had two eyes, Danger Fi no tend to leave her behind with Suyun. The chamber empties out, leaving Suyun alone with Dane and the truth she has been hiding. Her staff drops to the floor and the fake helpless act begins falling apart with it. Danejun asks why Suyun is doing this, insisting they will both die if they stay. Suyun watches her carefully, giving her one last chance to keep pretending. Dane tries to threaten him with words, but Suyun is already focused on what she is holding. He reveals that he noticed the weapon and understood she was connected to the enemy. The mark on her body confirms it, turning suspicion into proof. Suyun names it directly. She belongs to the Dump Guild. The Dump Guild is not just a shady group, it is a breeding ground for criminals and murderers. In the future, that guild becomes a threat almost as dangerous as the monsters themselves. Suyun admits she was smart, because she picked a moment where suspicion would naturally spread. Danger had two eyes, and that there were tebiness finally shows the person underneath. She cared too much about surviving, and Suyun noticed how carefully she measured everyone's strength. The mysterious man made her even more suspicious, because he was too convenient as a possible culprit. She used that confusion to choose her first victim, knowing everyone would blame the stranger instead. The history between Joho and Daeon made the setup even cleaner, but Suyun still caught the pattern. Dane laughs, realizing Suyun has been reading her much longer than she thought. Suyun stays silent, and that silence tells her he has not even shown the full answer yet. Dane asks what else he figured out, but her confidence is already turning into irritation. She warns Suyun that he only has seconds left, and her real plan finally begins moving. Her class is healer, but her skills are built for assassination, which is a very illegal job description. The second route starts and Dane attacks from above, expecting Suyun to be finished instantly. Her face changes the moment the attack fails because Suyun is not where she expected him to be. The strike crashes down hard, but Suyun has already avoided the trap she trusted most. Dane lands and resets herself, now forced to fight someone who already knows her tricks. The second route opens fully, and monsters begin pouring in through the Golden Gate. Danger had two eyes, and that there were no tentacles coming out of her body. The man cried tears of happiness. Suyun steps forward and shifts his attention from her to the monsters surrounding them. He looks at the swarm and treats them as the only problem left in the room. The first monsters rush in, but Suyun cuts into their charge before they can overwhelm the space. His weapon whips through the battlefield, turning the packed monster wave into an opening. Suyun launches himself from that opening, ready to clear the second route from the inside. The second route wastes no time, sending another monster straight at Suyun the moment the trial resumes. Suyun cuts through the swarm with clean movements, keeping the monsters away from the path behind him. His grip tightens on the weapon, and every motion starts looking less like survival and more like control. The monster crashes down before it can regain momentum, proving the second route is not overwhelming him yet. Suyun lands from the exchange, already measuring the next wave instead of celebrating the first hit. His expression stays calm, because this battlefield is finally giving him information he can use. More monsters appear ahead, and Suyun sees that there is no clear end to their numbers. That realization does not scare him, it just confirms the route is built to drain everyone slowly. He lowers his hand as the fight slows for a second, preparing to change the entire pace. Suyun activates his power, deciding that saving time matters more than hiding what he can do. A tunnel opens behind him, giving the others a chance to escape while he keeps the route occupied. The remaining challengers rush forward, trusting that Suyun's opening will not last forever. Yahello grabs the red-haired challenger and forces her to move before panic gets her killed. ActionToon pushes ahead with the others, still shaken by how much Suyun is handling alone. Yahello looks back, and the doubt on his face shows he has something heavier than fear on his mind. Suyun stops him and asks what he really wants to say before they lose the chance. Yahello finally turns around and calls Suyun by name, no longer treating him like some random sea crank. He asks if Suyun is truly only sea cranks, because nothing about this fight matches that label. Yahello admits he spoke with Byron, and that conversation clearly changed what he thinks of Suyun. Byron had already described Suyun as strong enough to defeat a Cyclops alone. That rumor follows Suyun into this moment, making Yahello realize he may be standing beside a hidden ranker. Yahello asks Suyun to become the raid leader instead, believing he is better suited for the crisis. He explains that the danger ahead needs someone who can actually lead under pressure. Suyun quietly asks whether Yahello still believes he is just a crank after everything he has seen. For a moment, Suyun says nothing, letting Yahello's request hang in the middle of the tunnel. Yahello answers honestly, admitting that Suyun is right about the situation. Suyun confirms who he is, removing the last bit of uncertainty between them. Yahello realizes Suyun hid his real ability on purpose, but Suyun keeps the reason private. Suyun says he wanted to be honest with Yahello, even if he still cannot explain everything. Then he rejects the request, telling Yahello that he must stay the raid leader. Suyun points out what Yahello has already done, organizing scared people when the route fell apart. He remembers how Yahello protected everyone without hesitating, even when the battle turned dangerous. That ability to keep people moving matters more here than raw strength by itself. Suyun makes it clear that Yahello is more qualified to lead the survivors out than he is. He also warns that a murder case will soon break out inside the raid team. When Yahello asks what happens to everyone else, Suyun calmly says he is staying behind. Yahello starts running, because every second he hesitates puts the escaping group in more danger. He forces himself to stop overthinking, accepting that his job is not to save Suyun right now. The weight of the decision hits both of them, but neither one can afford to turn back. Suyun lowers his weapon, ready to handle the route now that the others are out of his way. Yahello and the red-haired challenger retreat through the tunnel, leaving Suyun alone with the monsters. The last opening begins to close behind them, and the separation becomes final. Yahello shouts that he is coming back for Suyun, refusing to treat this like a goodbye. Suyun hears him, but his attention is already on the cold wave spreading across the battlefield. The temperature drops sharply, and Yahello realizes something far beyond normal monsters has entered. Blue frost spreads across the floor, changing the entire chamber into a frozen route. A monster lunges from behind, but the frozen ground slows the attack before it reaches him. The system window reveals the new skill, showing that Suyun has triggered frozen land. Cold mana gathers around him, turning the area itself into a weapon. The ice erupts upward, swallowing the monster's charge before it can close the distance. Suyun launches himself through the frost, using the frozen battlefield to move faster than the monsters. He breaks through another attack, forcing the swarm to fight on ground that now belongs to him. The wave rises around him, but Suyun keeps pushing forward instead of getting trapped. He rides the momentum of the ice, using one opening after another to tear through the route. The monsters rush together, but the frozen field turns their numbers into a weakness. Suyun slices through the advancing wave, clearing a path through the second route by force. The chamber erupts with ice and movement, and the swarm finally begins to collapse around him. Yahello watches from beyond the route, stunned by how much power Suyun was still hiding. Suyun stands at the center of the frozen field, surrounded by the result of his own skill. Yahello tells himself he needs to get the others out, even if he hates leaving Suyun behind. Suyun apologizes quietly, knowing Yahello would have stayed if he understood the full plan. He tells him that he cannot reveal everything yet, because the real work is only beginning. Yahello accepts the responsibility and rushes away, trusting Suyun enough to leave the route. Suyun says Yahello will still be useful later, which makes this trust more than a temporary alliance. With everyone gone, Soo-yun turns toward the next gate and prepares for the real fight. The golden portal opens again, signaling that the trial is not finished with him yet. Energy crackles around the gate and the atmosphere shifts from a monster wave to a boss encounter. A skeletal hand reaches through first, making the new enemy feel completely different from the others. The manged boss appears of the light, carrying the kind of presence that explains why the route was so deadly. Soo-hyun and Jo-ho stare forward as the final opponent finally shows itself. The robed figure steps out with its staff raised, bringing the route's hidden threat into the open. The boss laughs from behind its mask, and Soo-yun faces the real test waiting inside the second route. Jo-ho steps back into view, still trying to process the boss that just appeared inside the route. He points at the floating skeleton, asking what that thing even is, while Soo-yun stays strangely calm. The boss immediately corrects him, offended less by the danger and more by being called a skeleton monster. Jo-ho's confidence almost leaves his body, because the boss talking politely somehow makes it worse. The creature asks to be addressed properly, and the battlefield turns awkward for about 1 cursed second. Then it calls their confusion foolish, making it clear this thing has intelligence and attitude. Soo-yun identifies the enemy as a lich, but the creature rejects that too with weirdly specific pride. The boss sits there like an insulted old man, which is not the energy anyone expects from a dungeon monster. Its purple eyes flare, and the humor disappears as mana starts gathering around its body. The chamber shakes as the boss releases dark energy, proving its attitude is backed by real power. Cursed monsters begin forming around them, turning the frozen battlefield into another wave fight. The corpses rise one after another, and the route becomes crowded with enemies again. Soo-yun narrows his eyes, realizing the boss is using the dead monsters as fuel. Jo-ho notices the same thing late, and his face says he is officially done with magic nonsense. Soo-yun steps forward, letting frozen land spread between himself and the new monsters. His blade cuts through the cold air, preparing to stop the boss before the curse spreads further. Soo-yun moves first, riding the frozen ground straight toward the floating enemy. Jo-ho watches the movement from behind, shocked by how fast Soo-yun can close distance. Soo-hyun calls out to Jo-ho, pulling him back into the fight before fear locks him up. Jo-ho decides to cover Soo-yun, choosing defense over panic when the monsters rush in. Soo-yun leaves the ground behind, launching into the air as the ice carries him forward. He keeps climbing through the chamber, aiming directly for the boss instead of wasting time below. For a split second, Soo-yun sees the boss react and understands the attack will not be simple. He crashes against the wall and redirects himself, refusing to let the boss control the distance. The boss teleports away before Soo-hyun can reach it, exposing the first major problem in the fight. Soo-hyun understands the strategy immediately. The boss wants to avoid physical combat at all costs. The mana crystal on its forehead becomes the center of Soo-yun's attention. Soo-yun fires a piece of ice toward it, testing whether the crystal is the weakness he needs. The boss hides inside its cloak, avoiding the strike before Soo-yun can confirm the damage. That reaction tells Soo-yun enough because no monster protects a spot that does not matter. The boss fires dark magic back at him, punishing Soo-yun for getting too close to the answer. Soo-yun summons more frost around his hand, preparing to break through the curse instead of dodging forever. He releases blue flames of cold mana, forcing the dark attack to meet him head-on. The clash explodes through the air, shaking the room as ice and curse energy collide. Soo-yun gets pushed back, but the attack gives him the timing he needed. He realizes he gained distance instead of losing ground, and that small opening changes his plan. The boss taunts him from above, mocking him for dangling there while trying to think. Soo-yun suddenly flips into motion, proving he was not stuck. He was setting up his next angle. His blade strikes into the wall, and he uses it like a foothold to launch himself again. Soo-yun admits he is around a difficult limit, but that only makes the next move more important. The boss attacks from below, trying to catch him before he can build momentum. Soo-yun twists away from the strike, keeping his body just outside the dark magic's path. He slams back down and resets the distance, still searching for the clean route to the crystal. The surrounding monsters watch from below, waiting for any mistake that drops Soo-hyun into their reach. The boss decides Soo-hyun cannot do anything from that distance and prepares to overwhelm him. Soo-hyun lands lightly, showing he has not been cornered as badly as the boss believes. A small piece of debris skips across the ground and Soo-hyun notices the movement instantly. He grips his sword beside the frost, turning even the loose rubble into part of his setup. Soo-hyun raises his weapon with both hands, committing to one clean strike instead of another chase. The boss gathers dark mana around its staff, confident that it still controls the room. It finally reveals its title, calling itself Lich the Dark Sorcerer with way too much pride. Soo-hyun answers that the creature is not a true lich, and the statement cuts through its confidence. The monsters keep gathering behind the boss, but Soo-hyun is no longer focused on the army. The boss asks why the dungeon turned yellow, and its confusion exposes a crack in its control. Soo-lin says it did not need to do all of this, walking forward as if the answer is already decided. Joho asks what happens to Suyun, still worried that the plan leaves him trapped inside. Suyun points past the boss and says his opponent is that thing, not the monsters around them. He charges again, forcing the boss to respond before it can rebuild its formation. The boss finally realizes Suyun is aiming beyond the body and straight at the source of its power. Suyun cuts through the air, using the frozen path to turn the distance into speed. The boss mocks the plan, saying killing it will only make Suyun easier for the monsters to capture. Suyun keeps flying forward anyway, because the boss still has not understood his real target. The creature warns that the route will damage Suyun, but that threat no longer changes his choice. It calls for him to come closer, confident its trap will finish the fight the moment he enters range. Suyun raises one hand and prepares the timing, his expression calmer than the boss expected. Joho tightens his grip below, realizing Suyun is about to force the final exchange. Suyun's eyes lock on the crystal and everything else in the chamber becomes background noise. The cursed monsters surge forward again, trying to break Joho's line before Suyun lands the hit. Joho plants himself in their path, refusing to let them interrupt the attack from behind. He cuts into the first monster, turning his fear into the protection Suyun asked for. Suyun drops through the battlefield with blue fire around him, driving the fight toward its real ending. Joho grits his teeth and holds the line, determined to protect Suyun through the last push. Suyun lands from the last push, already turning the boss fight into a controlled two-man battle. The monsters keep closing in, but the frozen field gives Suyun space to move between them. He sweeps the ice outward, knocking the smaller monsters back before they can surround Joho. The Lich watches through its glowing eyes, realizing Suyun has grown stronger during this short fight. Instead of backing off, the boss laughs and treats their resistance like entertainment. More monsters rush in from the sides, trying to bury Suyun under numbers again. Suyun slams into the ground and sends another burst of ice through the crowded route. Joho and the Lich both notice the same thing. Suyun is not slowing down. Suyun tells Joho they are only getting started, making it clear the plan is still alive. Joho calls out to him, unsure how they are supposed to break through a boss like this. For a second, Joho just stares, stuck between fear and the pressure to keep up. The Lich keeps laughing above them, certain their effort will collapse before it matters. Suyun quietly explains the next move, pulling Joho into the plan instead of leaving him behind. Joho asks if it is really possible, and Suyun answers with complete confidence. That confidence finally steadies Joho even though he still knows one mistake could ruin everything. Joho agrees to help, and says he will try not to drag Suyun down. The Lich moves first, diving through the air before they can finish preparing. Suyun launches himself upward, forcing the boss to respond to him instead of Joho. He dodges through the attack and drives the fight higher, keeping the Lich away from the ground. The boss gets knocked off balance for the first time, and that tiny reaction matters. The Lich is shocked that Suyun can pressure it this quickly after the rout began. From above, the battlefield shows the real problem. Every direction is still packed with enemies. Suyun pulls more cold mana together, creating the opening Joho needs to enter the fight. Both fighters move across the frozen field, using the ice like a path instead of an obstacle. The Lich fires dark magic again, trying to interrupt their timing before it becomes dangerous. Joho grips his sword and prepares his own skill, finally committing to Suyun's rhythm. He releases Wind Dance, sending a sharp current through the battlefield toward the Lich. The wind tears forward through Suyun's frozen mana, turning two separate skills into one attack. The combined force slams into the root, and even the Lich feels the pressure closing in. Suyun sprints through the chaos, using the blast as cover to shorten the distance. Joho is thrown into the air by the force, but he keeps his sword ready instead of freezing up. Suyun races beneath him, giving Joho the exact line he needs to strike from above. Joho crashes down into the opening, forcing the Lich to split its attention for one dangerous second. Suyun follows from below, turning their two angles into a trap around the boss. The Lich gathers cursed mana and tries to crush both attacks at once. Suyun cuts upward, using his frozen blade to break into the Lich's defense. The boss barely avoids the clean hit, but the blade is already closer than it expected. A piece of Suyun's frozen sword snaps off, flying away like a useless shard. The Lich knocks them back, thinking it has destroyed the attack before it could land. But the broken ice continues moving through the air, carrying the real threat with it. The Lich finally notices the shard too late, and its confidence cracks before the body does. It realizes Suyun's sword was covered in ice, meaning the broken piece was never wasted. Joho forces another swing through the opening, keeping the boss from reacting freely. Suyun drops in from above, closing the final distance while the Lich is distracted. The boss screams as the plan reaches the crystal it had been protecting the whole time. The hidden shard strikes the jewel directly, damaging the source of the Lich's power. The impact erupts through the chamber, sending dust and ice across the battlefield. Suyun smiles, knowing the trap worked exactly the way he planned. Joho and Suyun land near the boss, but neither of them relaxes yet. The broken ice falls apart in the air, proving the attack spent everything on that one hit. Joho drops to one knee, exhausted from matching Suyun's timing under that much pressure. The Lish's body trembles near him, while Joho struggles to keep himself upright. Suyun stays calm, recognizing that the boss is weakened but not fully finished. He charges again before the Lich can recover, refusing to let the damaged crystal stabilize. Joho turns towards Suyun and the fight finally slows long enough for them to speak. Suyun apologizes for what he said earlier, admitting he pushed Joho harder than he meant to. Joho accepts it and tells him they should clear out the small monsters first. The remaining creatures rush in immediately, as if they were offended by being called small fry. Suyun and Joho move together, cutting through the wave before it can separate them again. Suyun pours more mana into the floor, rebuilding the frozen root beneath their feet. Joho steps onto the blade-like ice path, trusting Suyun's timing without hesitation. He surges forward on the frozen track, finally moving with the speed the plan demands. Wind and ice spiral together, creating a storm that tears across the center of the chamber. The combined attack crashes toward the Lich, stronger than anything either fighter used alone. The Lich realizes their skills are linking together, and that discovery shakes its confidence. It refuses to fall for the same trick again, pulling cursed mana around itself like a shield. The boss watches Suyun approach, convinced it has already adapted to their strategy. Suyun and Joho close in from separate angles, forcing the Lich to defend both sides again. Suyun dives through the opening, turning the boss's focus exactly where he wants it. His smile returns, showing the second rush was meant to bait the Lich into overreacting. He rises above the boss, keeping just enough distance to avoid the cursed counter. The Lich laughs and releases a darker power, dragging the mood of the chamber down instantly. Its body warps under the black energy, showing that the damaged crystal has not ended the fight. The boss promises endless pain, spreading a shadow that feels bigger than its broken body. Joho asks if it is over, but even he can tell the answer is not comforting. Suyun looks up in silence, already reading the next danger forming above them. The Lich reforms inside the black smoke, turning the victory into a much worse second phase. After surviving the rout, Suyun and Joho hide in the bushes while the rescue scene floods with people. Joho looks at the cameras and ambulance crews ahead, wondering what they are supposed to do now. Nearby, Kim Daeun is already crying in front of reporters, pretending she is just another shaken survivor. Her performance is loud and dramatic, but now it looks more desperate than convincing. Joho watches her from the bushes and lets out a tired laugh, seeing how fast she changed roles. Suyun reminds him that if other people recognize them, the situation will only become more annoying. Joho agrees to help him slip away, but only after making one condition clear. He pulls out a small bag, proving he came prepared with more than an escape plan. Suyun notices the bag right away, and that is when Joho offers him his share of the loot. Joho explains that even a B ranker needs ether stones for a living, so Suyun should not refuse them. But Joho admits he does not feel qualified to keep anything after what Suyun did inside. Suyun thinks back to the Lich's crystal, the real reward hidden behind that chaotic boss fight. Joho says the raid team is safe for now, but the aftermath will not stay quiet for long. He offers to stay behind and handle the situation while Suyun gets out through the closest road. Joho calls a driver named Yoonghun, using his connections to move Suyun before reporters catch him. The forest road stretches ahead, giving Suyun one clean exit from the dungeon mess. A taxi arrives through the trees, and the escape finally starts feeling possible. Inside the car, Yoonghun casually asks if Suyun is Joho's brother, which makes things instantly awkward. Suyun stays quiet by the window, already more focused on what comes next than small talk. He remembers a future where everything collapsed, and even reaching the culprit had become impossible. The memory shifts to his past self, standing powerless beside stronger people who carried the fight. Back in the taxi, Suyun notices his fatigue level is already dangerously high after that dungeon. He sits in silence, understanding that pushing harder right now would only break his body down. Still, the reason he needs money has not changed because hospital bills keep waiting outside every battle. At the Etherstone office, a manager relaxes with his tablet, expecting another normal transaction. The moment Suyun's offer reaches him, his face nearly leaves the rest of his head behind. Suyun sits calmly in the meeting room, looking completely unimpressed by the luxury around him. He turns toward the door as the staff rush in, already knowing the stone got their attention. The manager greets him with ridiculous enthusiasm, suddenly treating Suyun like the most important customer alive. Suyun places the pouch on the table, letting the real business begin without wasting time. The manager opens it and immediately recognizes the item, realizing this is not an ordinary ether stone. Suyun says he finds it odd that a company with high-ranked stones has no yellow-grade records. The room goes quiet as the staff realize Suyun is not just selling, he is testing what they know. He taps the red package on the table, making the pressure in the room even worse. The staff stare at the package like it might explode, which is fair, because financially, it kind of does. Both employees panic the moment they understand what Soo-yeon brought into their office. The system identifies the item clearly, a high-grade ether stone called the Crystal of Life. The stone's name confirms the truth. This is the same crystal tied to the Lich's life force. The manager's hands shake, because even touching it feels like handling something above his pay grade. Soo-yeon looks down at his clean hands, remembering how recently that crystal came from a boss fight. He gets up to leave, making it clear he does not want the company dragging this out. Soo-yeon knocks once at the door, keeping his tone polite while controlling the entire room. He turns back with a small smile, giving the manager one final warning before leaving. The staff are left frozen in place, realizing a teenager just walked in and casually broke their day. Back outside, Jehoho explains that Soo-yeon will eventually be revealed as Kim Soo-yeon of the rankings. He says he does not want to throw Soo-yeon into that mess before the timing is right. Jehoho stands up, already deciding that he will handle the public chaos himself. The reporters swarm the rescue area, and Joho admits he is better suited for dealing with them. Soo-hyun listens quietly, understanding that Joho is protecting him in a way strength alone cannot. He accepts the favor for now, since dealing with attention would only slow down his real goal. Joho smiles confidently, stepping into the role Soo-hyun trusted him with back in the route. Soo-yeon ends the conversation in the taxi, too exhausted to keep talking through everything. The memory of the dungeon lingers behind him, reminding him how close the fight came to breaking open bigger secrets. At the office, the manager is left laughing nervously alone with snacks and paperwork. His assistant enters, confused by the sudden mood shift and the mess sitting on the table. The assistant explains that someone wants to sell ether stones, pulling the manager right back into business mode. The manager takes the call while trying to act professional, even though the earlier shock has not worn off. Soo-yeon stands firm during the deal, refusing to look impressed by the company's reactions. From above, the meeting looks calm, but both sides understand this transaction is anything but normal. The explanation confirms why the crystal matters, because a crystal of life is also a type of ether stone. To clear that dungeon properly, breaking the crystal was necessary, but selling it creates a new opportunity. The manager panics and asks Soo-yeon to wait, realizing he cannot let this customer walk away. Soo-yeon checks his account and sees the deposit arrive, a clean 600 million won. Outside, he stares at his phone in evening white, finally holding the money his family desperately needs. But the number only matters because of what comes after it, stopping the future destruction before it begins. He decides he can use the money later, but for now, he does not want to worry his mother. Soo-yeon returns home and quietly announces that he is back. His sister, Soo-yeon, turns from the kitchen and calls his name in relief. She smiles when she sees him, and for a moment the danger outside their home feels far away. Then she notices his condition, and Soo-yeon stands there injured and soaked from the dungeon. Soo-yeon comes home to his mother's smile, but the dungeon has followed him through the front door. He sees her reaction and immediately understands that hiding his condition will not be easy. His mother notices the scar on his face, and her worry cuts straight through his calm act. Soo-yeon explains it as a small injury from the restaurant, choosing the simplest lie he can manage. The restaurant really was a mess, so at least his excuse has a tiny piece of truth. But Soo-yeon's face makes it clear he knows that explanation is not enough. He lowers his eyes, realizing that protecting his family also means keeping them away from the truth. His mother sits him down instead of pushing harder because worry matters more than interrogation. They settle at the table and the home feels painfully normal after everything he just survived. She holds her cup quietly, waiting for him to explain what is really going on. Soo-yeon tells her he can earn money now, and that they do not need to keep struggling the same way. He chooses each word carefully, knowing this conversation can change their entire life. His mother smiles softly at him, and that simple warmth almost makes the lie harder to carry. Then Soo-yeon pulls out his phone, finally showing her proof instead of only promises. He hands it over, letting a number speak before she can dismiss him. His mother freezes when she sees the balance, unable to process what is on the screen. The account shows 600 million won, turning his quiet statement into something impossible to ignore. She panics with the phone in her hands, because no normal restaurant job creates that kind of money. Soo-yeon admits she has every reason to be worried, since people do not just stumble into money like this. But to him, this second chance exists, so he can protect peaceful days like the one in front of him. He keeps eating like the matter is settled, even while his mother is still trying to breathe. The table goes quiet for a moment, with his mother trapped between relief and fear. Soo-yeon leaves the room after dinner, already thinking about the next thing he needs. He opens his bag and starts gathering the gear he has left after the dungeon. The old case hits the bed, reminding him how limited his current equipment really is. Soo-yeon studies the knife and decides that surviving future fights with scraps is not enough. He smiles faintly because upgrading his gear is the first step toward fighting properly. A workshop hammer strikes hot metal, shifting the story toward the person who can solve that problem. Inside the workshop, Tools line the walls and the place looks built for people who live by craft. More blades and tools hang nearby, showing this is not some random repair shop. The craftsman works with a grin, clearly enjoying the process more than any normal person should. Back home, Suyun's mother stops in the hallway as the thought of his money finally catches up. She reaches for his hand, still needing one more answer before letting him go. Her expression tightens, not with anger, but with a mother's fear that he is hiding pain. She holds his hand and asks for at least some honesty about what he is doing. Suyun is caught off guard because this kind of concern reaches him more deeply than danger. His eyes soften and for a second he cannot separate this home from the life he stole back. The memory hits him sharply, dragging him to another mother and another painful farewell. In that memory, the real Suyun stands helpless as his mother sits before him. She reaches toward her son with a gentle hand, speaking like she already knows the end is near. Her smile stays warm even in the memory, making the loss feel heavier than the words. Back in the present, his mother calls to him again and pulls him out of that grief. Her voice shakes slightly, because she can tell he disappeared somewhere painful for a moment. She tries to smile again, choosing patience over pressure even when fear is written on her face. Suyun grips his hands together, realizing he cannot answer her without exposing too much. He remembers the destroyed world he came from, and the reason he cannot live like an ordinary son. His mother bows her head, admitting that she is scared of the path he has chosen. Suyun listens silently, because this is the part money cannot fix. She says a year is long and that his work is dangerous enough to make any parent afraid. Her worry finally spills out plainly, not as blame, but as love that has nowhere else to go. Another memory of his real mother returns, showing the same kind of warmth waiting behind a door. That smile reminds him that both lives have left him with feelings he cannot easily repay. Across the table, the present mother keeps talking, unaware of the memories behind Suyun's silence. Suyun smiles and tries to reassure her, choosing confidence because fear would only hurt her more. She suddenly drops the phone and the fragile calm at the table breaks all at once. Suyun keeps his expression relaxed, pretending the money and danger are easier than they really are. The dishes spread across the table and the meal becomes their first quiet peace after the dungeon. His mother serves him more food and he accepts it like an ordinary son for one small moment. Suyun realizes this warmth belongs to the real Kim Suyun, not the person living inside his place. Somewhere else, a powerful craftsman turns toward his work while Suyun's next step comes into focus. Kim Dae-ho raises his tool with pride, treating his craft like a battle of its own. The system introduces him as Weapon Master Craftsman Kim Dae-ho, confirming he is exactly who Suyun needs. Danger has a call in the middle of work, already sounding annoyed before the conversation even starts. He returns to the heated metal, giving the forge more attention than the person calling him. The interruption keeps dragging on, and his patience starts falling apart faster than the material on the anvil. Danger had two eyes, storms of happiness, the manner of a man who would rather fight his own doorway. Suyun waits outside and greets him politely, already knowing this meeting matters for his future. Dae-ho stares at the visitor, clearly not expecting someone this young to come looking for him. He demands to know who Suyun is, turning the first meeting into an immediate test. Suyun lowers his gaze with a quiet smile, ready to win over the craftsman he came to find. Dae-ho steps back into the workshop, and Suyun's request finally reaches the person it was meant for. Suyun studies him quietly, knowing this craftsman is not someone he can win over with normal money. Dae-ho sits in front of him like an old master, already testing whether this young visitor is serious. He recognizes that Suyun came here with a specific purpose, not just curiosity. Suyun explains that he finished the item Dae-ho requested, which immediately changes the mood in the room. Dae-ho looks surprised because Suyun is moving much faster than he expected. The completed blade rests on the floor, showing that Suyun is not making empty claims. Dae-ho stares at it with pride, clearly more impressed by the work than he wants to admit. Suyun asks how this was possible, while Dae-ho says the answer is tied to the materials he used. Dae-ho reminds him that the blade was made from the treasure material Suyun brought in. Suyun goes quiet, realizing this old man's skill is even better than he remembered. Manhwa tells him to take the weapon he created, since Suyun provided the rare material himself. Suyun is caught off guard because Dae-ho even thought about giving him that weapon for free. Dae-ho explains that the more famous someone becomes, the more criticism starts chasing them too. The workshop glows around them and the conversation shifts from a simple request into something more personal. Suyun understands what Dae-ho is really saying. This is about reputation as much as craftsmanship. He tells Dae-ho he wants him to make something stronger, something worthy of the fights ahead. Dae-ho smiles, because Suyun's seriousness is exactly the kind of challenge he enjoys. The old craftsman admits Suyun found the right place if he wants truly exceptional work. Dae-ho brings up the contract, forcing the conversation into proper business before anything else. He looks Suyun over and asks what kind of request he is actually making. Suyun answers by showing the ether stone, already knowing Dae-ho understands its value. He stays calm under Daeho's stare, because this rare stone is only the start of the offer. Daeho realizes Soo-yun wants the crafting process to begin with that stone at the center. Soo-yun's thoughts move forward, connecting this commission to the bigger path he has to climb. The system confirms that Soo-yun is entering the abyss, pushing his preparation into another stage. Inside the glowing space, Soo-yun arrives before the next trial with no one else beside him. A white-haired figure sits nearby, showing that the abyss has already placed another obstacle in front of him. Soo-yun walks past the figure without panic, focused on clearing the trial instead of reacting emotionally. The system announces the trial of the 11th floor, making the next challenge official. Back at home, Soo-yun returns through the doorway while his mother notices him right away. She greets him with relief, still trying to understand the strange pace his life has taken. The system explains that the abyss has several difficulty levels, and Soo-yun has chosen the highest one. It shows that he is allowed to attempt the trial only once a day, making each run matter. Soo-yun pushes through later floors quickly, cutting down enemies as the numbers keep climbing. He lowers his stance and attacks with more pressure, treating the trial as real training. A massive monster rushes him, but Soo-yun threads through the attack and tears the fight open. When the trial ends, he walks away with a new blade in hand and another floor cleared. The next scene jumps to the hospital, where Hakun sits beaten up after pushing himself too far. The red-haired staff member scolds him for overdoing it, and Hakun admits it was harder than expected. Hakun still tries to act relaxed, even while his body clearly says he lost that argument. He smiles through the pain, turning the whole hospital visit into another awkward recovery routine. Soo-yun's climb keeps moving in the background, showing how much faster he is growing than everyone else. Hakjun's phone starts ringing, pulling his attention away from the lecture beside his bed. Soo-hyun remembers the blade he used back when he was Kim Sunjin, tying this new weapon to his old life. That old blade was the greatest sword he ever used, created through countless rare efforts from the Awakened. The scene returns to the building, connecting that legendary memory back to Daeho's workshop. In Soo-yun's memory, Daeho was found injured in a ruined workshop, but still alive enough to matter. Daeho stares at Soo-yun with suspicion, not used to being approached by someone this confident. Soo-yun introduces himself properly, giving Daeho the name Kim Soo-yun with calm respect. Daeho has never heard the name before, so he immediately questions whether Soo-yun is important. When Soo-yun mentions Daeho's work for awakened fighters, the old man explodes in denial. Daeho throws him out without hesitation, proving that pride might be his strongest defense. Soo-hyun takes the rejection calmly, as if getting kicked out was already part of the meeting. He tells Daeho that he has prepared the rare material for the commission. The closed door stays silent for a moment, and that silence says Daeho is listening now. Daeho cracks the door open, admitting he can at least inspect the material first. He reaches out with a reluctant hand, acting annoyed while clearly dying of curiosity. The moment he sees the stone, Daeho's expression changes and his confidence starts slipping. Soo-yun presents the crystal cleanly, letting the rare material make the argument for him. The crystal's quality is described as nearly impossible for the current era to obtain. Soo-yun thinks back to the dungeon outbreak, revealing why he needed to clear that disaster first. The memory of his former equipment appears around him, showing the level he is trying to rebuild. Daeho inspects the crystal closely, and the old craftsman can no longer hide his interest. He grips it with a grin, already imagining what kind of result he could create from it. Daeho asks whether Soo-yun wants him to make a sword, and Soo-yun confirms the request. That answer makes Daeho smile wider, because the challenge has officially caught his attention. He laughs so loudly the room shakes, finally dropping the act of not caring. Daeho's excitement fills the workshop, making him look more like a man meeting destiny than a client. Soo-yun watches him calmly, already knowing that stubborn craftsmen are easiest to move with real materials. Daeho accepts the request, turning the failed first meeting into the partnership Soo-yun wanted. Soo-yun extends his hand, understanding that this handshake is a serious step toward future battles. They seal the agreement, and Daeho becomes part of Soo-yun's preparation for what is coming. Daeho adds that Soo-yun can borrow something temporary from the workshop if he needs it. Outside, the sun begins setting, and Soo-yun leaves with the deal secured. He stops by the door, noticing the temporary blade Daeho left for him. Soo-yun walks away from the workshop with the borrowed gear, already testing its weight in his mind. He realizes it is surprisingly usable, which is exactly what he expected from Daeho. Soo-hyun thinks the weapon will do for now, at least until the real commission is finished. Back at the hospital, Hasko-jun answers the phone and wonders who would be calling him. He freezes when he sees the caller, clearly not expecting Soo-yun to contact him now. Soo-yun greets Lee Jo-ho over the phone, moving straight into the next piece of his plan. He stands outside under the bright city sky and asks Jo-ho for a favor. After securing money for his mother's store, Soo-yun starts looking for a safer place to move them. But even while handling family matters, the abyss keeps pulling his attention back to the future. News about the Gwangju dungeon spreads everywhere, and the Dump Guild problem refuses to disappear cleanly. Joho understands Suhyun's warning, but he still worries about acting without getting caught. Suhyun explains the danger plainly because the next dungeon outbreak will be far worse than the last. He says the Anyang Green dungeon could cause tens of thousands of casualties if nobody interferes. Joho listens from the hospital bed, realizing Suhyun is not asking for a small favor. Suhyun gives him room to refuse, since helping with this tragedy could drag Joho into real danger. Joho looks down for a moment, weighing the risk against the lives Suhyun is trying to save. Then he agrees to do what he can, even while knowing this will not be easy. For Suhyun, this final favor is about preparing for the Anyang disaster before history repeats itself. He knows the next floor has to be cleared perfectly, with every movement sharpened for what comes next. The abyss activates around him again, pulling him away from the normal world in a flash. Suhyun lands inside a desert trial, surrounded by bones and sand under a burning sky. He gets his bearings quickly, understanding that the floor is already testing his focus. The sand begins shifting around the giant skeleton, and the first real threat reveals itself. A swarm of rats pours out from the bones, turning the empty desert into a moving flood. The system gives the trial's name, the Nest of Rats, and the goal is simple survival and escape. Suhyun drops into the sand hard, immediately feeling how unstable the terrain is beneath him. He steadies himself in the crater, ready to deal with the swarm before it closes in. Suhyun watches the rats gather, judging their movement instead of wasting energy on panic. He realizes the floor is designed to bury challengers under numbers, before they understand the pattern. To the swarm, Suhyun probably looks like food, which is an ugly way to start training. The rats charge all at once, forcing him to move before the desert becomes a trap. Suhyun cuts through the first wave, using wide movements to keep the swarm from surrounding him. The rats rush back in immediately, proving that clearing one side does not solve the floor. One leaps at him through the dust, but Suhyun catches the timing and knocks it away. His borrowed gear flashes across the battlefield, giving him enough reach to control the closest enemies. Suhyun grits his teeth, realizing this trial is testing stamina more than raw power. Whatever these rats are, their real danger is how quickly they replace anything he knocks down. He plants his feet in the sand and prepares to change the flow of the fight. Blue flame erupts around him, pushing back the swarm before it can swallow the space. Suhyun rides the burst forward, using the flame as both cover and momentum. He floats above the burning field, finally creating distance from the endless rat wave. Even individually, the rats are weak, but a swarm can punish one mistake without mercy. Suhyun studies the field calmly, looking for the one part of the trial that does not fit. The rats leap again, and he launches upward before their bodies can close around him. He notices one rat moving differently, and that small detail gives him a new lead. Suhyun strikes through the air, knocking another attacker aside while tracking the strange survivor. He flips out of the next rush, keeping his body above the flood long enough to think. The swarm gathers beneath him again, proving the rats are not chasing randomly. He crashes back into their formation, opening a path through the center by force. Suhyun cuts along the gap, using speed to stay ahead of the bodies piling behind him. Then an idea clicks, and he stops treating the rats as the main problem. He launches upward with blue flame, planning to follow the route the surviving rats reveal. If the floor is hiding a pattern, then the rats running away might expose where it leads. Suhyun drops back down in a burst of flame, clearing enough space to move again. A rat tries to flee, and Suhyun decides to let it guide him instead of finishing it there. He follows the movement across the sand, letting the survivor pull him toward the floor's secret. The ground breaks under the pressure, and the battlefield finally gives him something new. A hole opens beneath the dust, showing that the desert has been hiding space below the surface. Deep underground, something moves, and the sound tells Suhyun this trial is not finished. The surviving rats crawl into a stone corridor heading away from the open desert. Suhyun watches them regroup, realizing they are returning to a nest instead of simply escaping. Some rats survived his attack, but their behavior now matters more than their numbers. Suhyun follows the last rat carefully, letting it lead him through the underground passage. The rat darts around a corner, trying to lose him inside the ruins below the floor. It scrambles deeper through the corridor, making the hidden route easier to track. Suhyun spots it ahead and understands that the floor's real answer is somewhere beyond the tunnel. The chase breaks through the passage, dragging him toward a larger chamber beneath the tower. Back in the hospital, Joho is still on the phone trying to follow Suhyun's impossible request. He presses for more details because Suhyun's plan sounds dangerous even by awakened standards. Suhyun answers calmly, making it clear that Joho himself needs to get stronger for what is coming. Soon Joho faces the 19th floor, and the Tower of Trials immediately buries him in rats. The swarm rushes him from every direction, making the floor feel disgusting before it even becomes deadly. Joho dodges the first attack, barely keeping enough space to avoid being overwhelmed. Blue flame cuts through the swarm, buying him a path before the rats can trap him. The rats hesitate for a moment, but the trial keeps pushing them forward anyway. Joho calls on holy flames, forcing himself to meet the wave instead of running from it. Soo-yeon watches from nearby, letting Joho handle the pressure while staying ready to step in. He notices cracks and dents across the ground, realizing the chamber has empty space underneath. Soo-yeon lands near the center and listens, reading the floor through the damage left behind. The structure above him stretches high into the tower, hiding more than a simple rat nest. A huge wall begins shifting open, proving the hidden chamber is connected to something larger. Soo-yeon looks up as the tower trembles, realizing the real enemy has finally noticed them. He lowers his stance and prepares to move, while the floor's pressure changes completely. A sudden presence freezes him for a second, and his expression turns from focused to alarmed. A massive serpent-like monster slides into view, revealing the true ruler of this underground nest. Soo-yeon looks up and realizes the boss is not just another rat hiding under the floor. The creature roars above him, turning the 19th floor into a much deadlier boss fight. Soo-yeon drops through the air with his sword ready, turning the serpent's size against its own slow reaction. He gathers divine flame in his palm, choosing a skill that can hit harder than ordinary sword strikes. The blue flame erupts downward, blasting the serpent before it can fully control the space. Soo-yeon lands hard on the floor, using the impact to reset his stance before the boss recovers. He looks up quickly, already expecting the monster to survive the first exchange. The serpent rises through the dust, proving this floor boss is built to take punishment. Soo-yeon decides to bind its movement first, because fighting that body head-on would waste too much time. He launches himself away from the snapping jaws, buying just enough space to start the setup. The serpent's body coils across the chamber, giving him a massive target but almost no safe ground. Soo-yeon smiles as the idea comes together, reading the monster's movement instead of chasing it blindly. Green restraints shoot across the walls, spreading through the ruins before the serpent can notice. Soo-yeon grabs the vine and pulls, turning the environment itself into part of his trap. The restraints snap tight around the serpent, forcing its huge body to crash into the floor. The impact shakes the chamber, and the hidden system root begins reacting to Soo-yeon's restraint plan. He rides the opening upward with blue flame, moving toward the boss before the bind breaks. The serpent takes the hit, but Soo-yeon immediately sees that the damage is still too shallow. The monster thrashes through the chamber, forcing him to keep moving while the vines hold for seconds. Its tail smashes the ground, showing that even restrained, one careless step can still end the fight. Soo-yeon darts along the wall, staying outside the serpent's strongest line of attack. The boss slams down from above, trying to crush him before he can rebuild momentum. Soo-yeon coats his blade in divine flame, deciding that a normal cut will never be enough. He closes in along the serpent's body, using the monster's own length as a path forward. The blue flame carves across the scales, finally forcing a stronger reaction from the boss. The serpent roars in pain, and Soo-yeon confirms the flame can pierce through its defense. He drives the attack deeper, refusing to let the boss regain control of the chamber. Even then, the serpent's resistance and regeneration make it clear this fight will not end quickly. Soo-yeon strengthens the flame again, focusing on destructive power instead of small openings. Blue fire spreads around him, turning the entire battlefield into the foundation for one heavier attack. The flame takes shape above the chamber, forming a bird-like presence against the light. That burning shape sharpens into something alive, and Soo-yeon prepares to use it properly. The system confirms perfect completion of the 19th floor, leaving Soo-yeon wondering if the boss is truly finished. He remembers that every 10th floor becomes much harder, which means the 20th floor may be the real wall. Soo-yeon looks up quietly, already treating the victory as preparation instead of a reason to relax. Outside Daeho's workshop, the next piece of Soo-yeon's preparation waits under a calm sky. The finished blade rests in the sun, showing that his future fights will not rely on borrowed gear forever. The trial's danger returns to focus, with the serpent still showing exactly why better weapons matter. Soo-yeon avoids another sweeping attack, staying close enough to pressure the boss but far enough to survive. The serpent's tail tears through the floor, and every miss still destroys the space around him. Soo-yeon launches upward again, turning the broken ground into another angle of attack. The monster's counter smashes into his guard, and the force throws him across the chamber. He twists through the air, recovering before the fall can turn into a real opening for the boss. Soo-yeon realizes the serpent is somewhat resistant to magic, which explains why the earlier flames were not enough. From above, the boss circles him again, using its body to control the whole arena. Its tail crashes down, forcing Soo-yeon to move before the floor collapses beneath him. He dashes through the dust, keeping his eyes on the serpent's head instead of the tail. The next strike nearly catches him, but Soo-yeon slips away and keeps the fight moving. The serpent opens its jaws and charges, trying to end the battle with one clean bite. Soo-yeon plants his blade against its mouth, stopping the bite before the monster can swallow the space. His eyes sharpen because that close range finally gives him a clear look at its timing. The serpent smashes him away again, proving brute force is still on the boss's side. It roars from the center of the chamber, angry that Soo-yun keeps surviving every exchange. Soo-yun lands among the rubble, battered but still calm enough to think through the next move. He admits the boss is huge and fast, but size alone does not make it unbeatable. Soo-yun rises to his feet, deciding the serpent is no longer just an opponent in front of him. He treats it as something he can solve, and that shift changes the entire fight. The serpent attacks again, still trusting its mouth and mass to overpower him. Soo-yun jumps over the strike, letting the boss slam into the ground instead of meeting it directly. He flips above the monster, creating the distance he needs for a cleaner counterattack. His strike crashes down from above, forcing the serpent to absorb another heavy blow. Soo-yun lands rough but keeps moving, because stopping now would let the boss reset. The serpent rises in front of him again, furious but starting to look predictable. Soo-yun smiles, realizing the boss has finally repeated the pattern he needed. The serpent freezes for an instant, sensing that it has been dragged into Soo-yun's timing. The green restraints wrap around its body again, locking the same movement that had caused so much trouble. The bindings tighten across the scales, proving Soo-yun was never trying to win with damage alone. Now that the boss is caught, Soo-yun has the opening he was really building toward. The divine flame forms into a phoenix, turning a simple skill into a summoned beast under his control. Blue fire fills the chamber as the phoenix spreads its wings around the trapped serpent. The summon circles above the battlefield, waiting for Soo-yun's command instead of attacking randomly. Soo-yun remembers that he obtained Phoenix on the 18th floor as Divine Flame's unique summon. The skill is simple in theory, but being able to command a beast makes it far more useful. Soo-yun sees the value clearly because a controlled summon can attack while he manages the battlefield. He smiles beside the phoenix, finally holding the answer to the serpent's size advantage. Soo-yun gives the order, and the phoenix dives straight toward the trapped boss. The serpent realizes the danger too late, roaring as blue flame closes in from above. The phoenix tears through the boss's body in a single blazing pass. The attack wraps around the serpent, burning through the resistance that had made the fight drag on. The blue flame consumes the boss's core, ending the 19th floor with Soo-yun's summon in complete control. News about Kim Soo-yun's ranking spreads through the city before he even gets a chance to breathe. People gather around the board, stunned that he cleared floor 19 with another impossible record. The Awakened Association is already trying to reach him, which means his quiet return is officially dead. Lee Joo-ho watches from a cafe and wonders if anyone actually knows who Soo-yun is. Before he can think much longer, the person everyone is searching for arrives like he just took a normal walk. Soo-yun steps out beside Joo-ho's bright red sports car, completely untouched by the attention around him. His calm expression says he knows people are staring, but none of it matters more than the next problem. Joo-ho apologizes for making him wait, already trying to make this meeting feel professional. That confidence lasts about 2 seconds before Joo-ho's excitement leaks out all over his face. The car draws attention from random people outside, which is not exactly helping the low-profile plan. Joo-ho proudly expects Soo-yun to be impressed, but Soo-yun mostly thinks about public transportation. Soo-yun wisely decides they should talk inside before Joo-ho turns the sidewalk into a car show. Once they sit down, the conversation finally shifts away from Flash and back to business. Soo-yun drinks quietly while Joo-ho prepares to explain what he has managed to uncover. Joo-ho says he contacted Soo-yun's mother's store, giving him at least one small relief before the bad news. But the mood changes fast, because Soo-yun can tell this meeting is not only about family. He finishes his water in silence, waiting for the part Joo-ho has been avoiding. Joo-ho explains that Soo-yun's old teammates might receive help if he tells the association what happened. Soo-yun listens without reacting, but the question on his face says he already knows where this is going. Instead of answering directly, he brings up the Dump Guild and forces the real issue onto the table. Joo-ho admits they investigated, but every lead has scattered without giving them a clean answer. Then he reveals the official result. The deaths were traced back to poison. That word lands hard because poison changes this from dungeon danger into human betrayal. Soo-yun understands immediately why Joo-ho finds the whole case suspicious. The memory of someone begging him to return safely still sits heavier than any ranking record. Soo-yun leaves the cafe with that promise in his mind and the red car waiting outside. What matters now is Anyang City, because that outbreak is the point where everything starts falling apart. Lee Joo-ho may be doing what he can, but Soo-yun sees nothing reassuring in the information so far. Soo-yun reaches the answer he already suspected, and it is not one the association can handle for him. If the outbreak has to be stopped, he decides he needs to move before anyone else gets dragged in. By evening, he arrives at a quiet workshop far from the noise of the city. The place is filled with old tools and gear, exactly the kind of shop that values function over appearance. Soo-yun studies the equipment inside, looking for something reliable enough for what comes next. The blacksmith admits the item is difficult to handle, but also says he enjoyed working on something this good. He hands it over for inspection, knowing Soo-yun will understand the quality without needing a sales pitch. The moment Su-Yun touches the blade, he realizes this is better than he expected. He raises the sword and checks its balance with the calm focus of someone who has done this for years. His expression sharpens because this is not just a replacement weapon for a random dungeon run. The blade catches the light cleanly, showing off craftsmanship that even Su-Yun has to respect. He tests the motion once and the surrounding tools scatter from the pressure alone. Even without a real swing, the sword answers him like it was built for his hand. Su-Yun stands with the finished blade, and for once he looks genuinely satisfied. Its edge and durability are both top quality, which means it can survive the kind of fights he expects. He smiles because this is exactly the kind of sword he needed before stepping into Anyang. The blacksmith asks if Su-Yun has thought of a name for it. Su-Yun decides on Gram, leaving the blacksmith confused for one very understandable second. The old man checks if he means gram as in weight, which is a fair reaction to a dead serious sword name. Su-Yun explains that gram is another name for Balmung from Northern European mythology. He still refuses to abandon the meaning behind a sword that once carried the idea of slaying a godlike monster. With the sword ready, Su-Yun says he has somewhere he needs to be and prepares to leave. The scene shifts to the castle at night where quiet walls hide the next real problem. Inside, a guard stands watch in the long hallway, unaware that the calm is already breaking. He patrols slowly through the corridor, surrounded by torches and shadows that make the silence feel heavier. A hand lands on his shoulder from behind and the guard instantly freezes. He spins around in panic, ready to defend himself before realizing who touched him. Commander Maxman catches him off guard and the exhausted soldier can barely get his words out. Maxman notices the guard has been on duty for days but asks him to hold out just a little longer. The guard walks away, leaving Maxman alone with the unease that has been building in the castle. Maxman looks upward as a strange feeling settles over him. Through the window, he senses something that does not belong inside the castle. The pressure hits him quietly and his confidence drops into a tense silence. Another soldier asks if he is troubled, but Maxman can no longer ignore what he felt. He turns sharply, already understanding that the danger is closer than anyone has realized. Earlier, Ju-Ho had returned to the cafe with more pieces of the same investigation. He asked how Su-Yun's preparations were going, and whether the plan for the 20th floor was ready. Su-Yun believed the enemies were hiding themselves, which made the lack of clear evidence even more dangerous. Ju-Ho found more deaths and missing awakened, but the numbers still matched the rising dungeon difficulty. That meant he could not prove anything yet, even if the pattern was starting to look wrong. Back at the workshop, the blacksmith returns with the finished sword and thanks Su-Yun for waiting. Su-Yun takes the blade, and the old man reminds him that a weapon this good deserves a proper name. He pushes Su-Yun to name it himself, since the sword now belongs to him. Su-Yun only smiles and says the name can wait, which is annoying, but somehow very on brand. At the castle, Maxman asks the guard if anything happened during duty and the answer comes back clean. Then the truth steps directly into his path, wearing a purple robe and a mask with no readable expression. Maxman stares at the intruder in silence, realizing the castle's real enemy has finally shown itself. Inside the castle, Commander Maxman faces Sir Attach and immediately questions why he is still here. Attach claims he only came to check the situation before leaving to assist the king. Maxman explains that the castle is holding for now, but Audrum's forces are still far stronger. Before Attach can continue, Maxman cuts him off and refuses to let the conversation stay polite. He moves close enough to make the warning personal, forcing Attach to hear what he really thinks. Behind that mask, Attach stays silent, but the pressure in the room changes completely. Maxman remembers the battlefield rule clearly. Soldiers are supposed to obey the chief commander's orders. But orders stop feeling honorable when the commander treats his own men as disposable pieces. Maxman stands as the nation's hero, and that title means he cannot ignore what Attach represents. His hand tightens, showing how close this conversation is to becoming something much worse. Then the castle doors erupt with noise, pulling both men away from their confrontation. Kim Su-Yun steps through the broken entrance, landing directly in the middle of the trial's chaos. He looks ahead without surprise, like the castle collapsing around him is only the opening problem. A glowing gate waits beyond the ruined space, marking the real start of the 20th floor. Su-Yun moves toward it, while the dungeon quietly drops him into another impossible scenario. Near the gate, a lazy blonde guide notices him and reacts like a customer arrived during nap time. The guide immediately starts talking business, which already tells Su-Hyun this floor has its own rules. He names the price at 100,000 points, and somehow expects that to sound reasonable. Su-Hyun pays without flinching, which makes the guide realize he may have judged this challenger too lightly. The guide bursts out laughing, partly impressed and partly offended by how casual Su-Hyun makes it look. He admits Su-Hyun is a monster, and says his first impression was completely right. When he asks where Su-Hyun plans to go, Su-Hyun answers that he is challenging level 10. The guide confirms that Soo-yun will be the one doing the killing, which makes the situation clear. After taking the points, he rushes him toward the gate before Soo-yun can ask for anything else. The guide waves him off with fake cheer, while Soo-yun walks forward with Graham at his side. The gate swallows him in darkness, and the easy conversation disappears instantly. Soo-yun realizes too late that the transfer is not exactly gentle. Instead of a normal entrance, he gets dropped through open air, like the dungeon forgot stairs exist. He catches himself mid-fall, already adjusting before panic can fully take over. The ground rushes up fast, forcing him to deal with the trial before he even learns the map. A system message appears and announces the 20th floor, stage 10, beginning right away. The objective reveals Grandalum, a steel-walled fortress guarded by thousands of soldiers. The trial gives him 1 month to collapse the castle, which sounds simple until the scale becomes visible. The system adds that the soldiers are not necessarily enemies, and allies can be recruited during the trial. Then it gives the real condition: uncover the castle's secret and stay alive. Soo-yun turns at that warning, realizing this trial is not built around simple combat. Night falls over the forest outside Grandalum, giving him time to think before making contact. He sets up camp away from the fortress, choosing information over a reckless first move. After observing the walls and guards, he confirms Grandalum is every bit as difficult as advertised. Soo-yun lies back and reviews the problem, knowing this will require planning more than brute force. He narrows his eyes as the answer becomes obvious, even if it is not the most comfortable one. He walks straight to the gate and greets the guards as a passing traveler. The guards immediately reject him, shouting that the castle is locked down and no stranger can enter. Soo-yun explains that he only wants to stay briefly, gather information, and go back to prepare. When they still refuse, he lowers his stance and accepts that talking will not open the door. One guard steps forward to stop him, trying to turn the stranger away by force. Soo-yun draws Graham in one clean motion, ending the warning phase instantly. His strike hits the gate area with enough force to shake the entire wall. The guards freeze as the ground cracks under him, realizing this traveler is not remotely normal. The impact explodes through the castle entrance, sending dust and broken stone across the courtyard. Back inside, Attach calmly explains that in a long siege, food supplies become the castle's real weakness. He says if Maxman gives up the castle now, everyone might as well die inside it. Maxman glares at him, hearing the logic, but hating the way Attach says it. Before he can respond, another crash shakes the castle and interrupts their argument. Maxman rushes toward the noise, asking what happened as the soldiers panic behind him. His expression tightens when he realizes the disturbance is coming from the gate. Outside, Soo-yun stands calmly and says it has been a while since he met a monster like the guide. The guide asks if Soo-yun came back for advice, and Soo-yun admits he needs assistance. Soo-yun asks him to help from there, keeping the request direct instead of wasting time. His small smile shows he already knows the guide is useful, whether the guide likes it or not. The guide listens quietly, sensing that Soo-yun is not asking because he lacks confidence. Soo-yun only adds one condition: try not to kill anyone if possible. The guide raises a finger, clearly enjoying the chance to test how serious Soo-yun really is. When Soo-yun says that is all, the guide grabs his weapon and gets moving. Soo-yun lands outside the castle path, using the drop itself to set up his next approach. He turns toward the fortress, measuring the distance and the patrols before making another move. From the hill, Grandalum looks massive, but now Soo-yun has seen enough to start working. He pauses, thinking through the guide's warning and the system's strange wording. Inside the walls, ordinary soldiers move through their routines, which proves this is not just an enemy base. That creates the real problem because conquering the castle without fighting is almost impossible. The front gate stands quiet again, but the tension around it has already changed. One guard notices movement beyond the wall and realizes someone is approaching again. The soldiers point their spears at Soo-yun and demand that he identify himself. Soo-yun refuses to play along, and his calm answer only makes them more nervous. Instead of waiting for permission, he launches himself upward before the guards can react. The soldiers track his movement from below, completely thrown off by how quickly he vanished. Soo-yun rises above the wall with Graham ready, turning the castle's height into his own entrance. He lands among broken stone and scattered debris, steadying himself before anyone reaches him. The guards stare at him from both sides, realizing the same intruder has returned through the worst possible route. Soo-yun looks forward in silence, already focused on the secret hidden somewhere inside Grandalum. The castle gate erupts as Soo-yun forces his way into Grandalum instead of waiting for permission. He lands in the broken stone, already steady enough to move before the guards can understand anything. The soldiers stare at the intruder standing beyond the shattered entrance, completely thrown off by his arrival. They shout that the gates are broken and order everyone to stop him at once. Soo-yun only smiles because Graham has already shown him exactly what kind of weapon it is. One clean swing proves the sword is not just good, it is a weapon worthy of its name. The guards rush him in formation, trying to overwhelm him before he can move deeper inside. Soo-yeon lowers his stance and lets them come, choosing control over panic. He cuts through the group with quick movements, but his strikes are aimed to disable, not kill. The soldiers are knocked aside one after another, leaving the courtyard in total confusion. Soo-yeon slips through the opening before the formation can close around him again. The guards rush to check each other, stunned that the places he struck show no fatal wounds. They realize he is avoiding lethal cuts on purpose, which makes his control even scarier. The archers on the wall finally react and prepare to fire from above. A volley rains down toward him, turning the courtyard into a trap from every angle. Soo-yeon stands in the center of the arrows and reads the path of each shot. He shifts his grip, waiting until the timing is tight enough to matter. With one burst of motion, he deflects the arrows and clears space around himself. The soldiers regroup at a distance, suddenly much less excited to rush him again. Soo-yeon looks toward the wall and notices the next wave already preparing above him. A stronger fighter drops down from the rampart, trying to hit him before he can climb higher. Soo-yeon stops the charge with one sharp counter, sending the man flying back. The impact tears through the stone and spreads panic across the wall. The soldiers check on their ally while Soo-yeon calmly confirms the person he wanted is here. He waits without chasing anyone, which somehow makes him look even more dangerous. The guards notice movement from the castle and realize someone important is coming. Commander Maxman steps forward and orders everyone to retreat while he faces Soo-yeon himself. Soo-yeon recognizes the chance immediately, since Maxman is the person he needed to draw out. The soldiers beg Maxman to withdraw, but he refuses to let his men take the risk for him. Soo-yeon admits he only wanted to shake the castle a little, but Maxman arriving changes the plan. A spear strikes the ground near him as the soldiers try to keep him surrounded. More attacks come from above, forcing him to move through the courtyard instead of standing still. A rope weapon snaps toward him from the wall, aiming to restrict his movement. Soo-yeon jumps onto the line and turns the enemy's trap into his own path forward. He plants his foot on the rope, using the tension to launch himself even higher. The soldier holding the line is pulled off balance before he can react. Soo-yeon swings through the air, moving above the formation instead of fighting through it. He slams into another guard midair and clears the next obstacle without slowing down. The guard is knocked away and Soo-yeon keeps using the rope to control the battlefield. A soldier finally realizes Soo-yeon is helping them avoid worse injuries and orders everyone not to attack. Maxman pushes through the guards, ready to handle the intruder himself. Soo-yeon charges from above, forcing Maxman to meet him in front of everyone. Their weapons collide, and Soo-yeon feels the difference right away. Maxman watches him from below, realizing the intruder's skill is not normal at all. Their blades lock in close range, and Soo-yeon admits Maxman is genuinely strong. The clash bursts outward with blue light, throwing pressure across the courtyard. The nearby soldiers are pushed back by the force, unable to enter the fight anymore. Dust rolls over the battlefield as both sides lose sight of the center. When the smoke starts to clear, Soo-yeon and Maxman are still standing across from each other. A soldier asks if Maxman is alright, but the commander is already focused on the next exchange. Maxman says he will be Soo-yeon's opponent and tells everyone else to guard the outside. The mention of the Alrim Kingdom catches Soo-yeon's attention, connecting Maxman to the castle's deeper history. Soo-yeon smiles faintly, because now the trial is finally showing him something important. Maxman raises his sword and declares that this intruder is the real threat. The soldiers place their faith in him, believing their commander can still protect them. They remember how Maxman became a hero 20 years ago by leading them to victory against Audrum. That faith surrounds him now, but to Soo-yeon it lives less like honor and more like a weight. He watches Maxman closely, recognizing the burden behind that heroic title. The truth is that no one realizes the name they praise has become the chain holding Maxman down. Soo-yeon understands that pain too well, because he once lived under that same burden as Kim Sunjin. A soldier apologizes to Maxman from behind, still trusting him to carry everything alone. Maxman tightens his grip, accepting the responsibility even as it drags him deeper. Soo-yeon lowers his sword and decides that words will not be enough anymore. He rushes forward, saying he may have to commit another crime to break the situation open. His fist tightens as he prepares to stop Maxman without destroying him. Soo-yeon crashes into Maxman again, driving the fight back into the center of the courtyard. Maxman blocks the attack, but his expression shows he knows this opponent is still holding back. For the first time, Maxman's confidence cracks as he sees Soo-yeon's next move coming. Soo-yeon catches the weapon and rope together, turning the struggle into a close-range bind. Maxman realizes too late that Soo-yeon used the entire exchange to set up one decisive opening. Soo-yeon pulls the line tight and locks Maxman in place before the commander can break away. A system window appears, revealing transformation, a trait that trades speed for tremendous destructive power. A massive blue arm forms above Soo-yeon, making the whole courtyard freeze in disbelief. Maxman stares up at it, completely shaken by something that should not exist in this world. Soo-yeon braces himself, aiming the blow with the same calm control he has used since entering. He says he will take those shackles off Maxman too, then brings the transformed strike down. The impact tears to the ground and buries the courtyard in dust and broken stone. The soldiers scream for Maxman through the smoke, unable to tell if their commander survived. Fear spreads across their faces as the wreckage settles around the place where he stood. Inside the broken stone, they spot Maxman's body and the entire castle falls into silence. The castle soldiers scramble after the huge impact, searching every corner for Commander Maxman. They tighten the lockdown immediately, making sure nobody enters or leaves while the commander is missing. One soldier looks around in confusion, realizing the battlefield suddenly became too quiet. Inside the castle, an empty corridor waits under torchlight, with no sign of Maxman anywhere. A dark shadow gathers against the wall, showing that Su-Yun's attack was never just a direct hit. A hand reaches out from the darkness, pulling someone through the shadow like a hidden doorway. Maxman drops hard onto the floor, still dazed from the blow that took him out. Su-Yun steps out behind him calmly, having moved the commander away before the soldiers found him. Maxman can barely understand what happened, which is fair considering he just got kidnapped by a wall. The trick is shadow assimilation, a dark attribute skill that lets Su-Yun move between connected shadows. It works through limits like range and daily use, but in the castle's darkness, it becomes extremely useful. Su-Yun checks the shadow behind him, confirming they arrived where he wanted without being followed. He studies the hallway carefully, choosing silence while the soldiers keep searching somewhere else. The empty passage gives him a short window to question Maxman before the castle catches up. Elsewhere, Suratach senses something strange and recognizes a familiar presence inside the castle. Su-Yun starts tying Maxman up, not to hurt him, but to keep the conversation controlled. Maxman wakes with suspicion already in his eyes, trying to figure out if his men are safe. Su-Yun keeps binding him while Maxman curses under his breath and tries to resist. The rope tightens around Maxman's hands, making it clear he is not leaving until Su-Yun gets answers. Maxman demands to know what happened to his soldiers, more worried about them than himself. Su-Yun answers calmly while finishing the knots, making it clear he did not come here to massacre anyone. He explains enough for Maxman to understand that the castle's real enemy is not the intruder in front of him. Maxman rises once Su-Yun lets him stand, but his guard stays up immediately. The mention of the Outram Kingdom shocks him, because that name is tied to the castle's oldest fear. Su-Yun presses him for the truth, trying to connect the siege with the strange corruption inside Grandalum. Maxman's face tightens as the pieces begin touching things he has tried not to question. He remembers Suratach telling him to endure the situation quietly for 1 month. Maxman admits suspicious things have happened, but trusting a stranger is not that simple. Su-Yun listens without arguing, knowing Maxman needs proof instead of another order. Maxman says Su-Yun alone could destroy the entire castle, which makes trust even harder. For a moment, he falls silent and remembers how badly Su-Yun overpowered him. That first sword clash already told Maxman this young man was far beyond an ordinary invader. Su-Yun faces him directly and makes the important point: if he wanted destruction, he could have done it. Maxman slowly lowers his resistance, understanding that Su-Yun's restraint was the first real clue. He decides to go with Su-Yun, choosing the risk of truth over another month of blind obedience. Su-Yun turns away with a faint smile, because now the trial finally has a real ally inside the castle. The torches burn along the wall as they move deeper into a part of Grandalum most soldiers avoid. Maxman leads him through the passage, saying they are almost at the place he wants to show. He raises the torch higher, guiding Su-Yun toward the darker lower levels. The stairs descend into a prison wing that feels separated from the rest of the castle. Maxman explains the place was used as a prison long ago, where many people died in darkness. They continue deeper, and every step makes the air feel heavier than the last. Su-Yun asks if there is a hidden area in the castle where light never reaches. Maxman keeps walking, and his silence already confirms Su-Yun is asking the right question. They arrive at a bar door covered in purple darkness, exactly the kind of place Su-Yun was looking for. A voice from inside demands to know who is there, instantly turning the prison quiet into danger. Maxman freezes, realizing someone is already waiting in a place that should have been sealed. Suratach steps into view, standing in the prison as if his presence there makes perfect sense. Maxman questions him immediately, unable to understand why Attach is inside the sealed prison. Attach does not panic, which only makes the situation feel even more wrong. Su-Yun steps forward and asks the same thing more sharply, refusing to let Attach dodge the answer. Attach explains that this prison was closed for years, so Shun should not have known how to enter. His blank mask gives nothing away, but his question shows he is testing how much Su-Yun knows. Su-Yun watches him closely, reading the threat behind the calm voice. Attach asks if they followed him, and the atmosphere shifts from suspicion to open hostility. Maxman reacts with alarm, realizing Attach may have been hiding far more than simple politics. Su-Yun reaches for Graham, deciding the answer is already clear enough. In one clean strike, he cuts through Attach's disguise before Maxman can stop him. Maxman stares in shock, unable to believe Suyun just attacked the royal advisor. Attach's body slams into the ground and Maxman's confusion turns into anger. He shouts at Suyun, thinking he's crossed the line for no reason. Suyun walks past him without backing down because the real explanation is still lying ahead. He tells Maxman to look closer at the thing he has been calling Attach. Suyun's calm warning forces Maxman to hesitate before rushing into another accusation. Maxman turns back and the fear on his face shows the truth has finally started appearing. The mask and flesh fall away, revealing that Attach was never human in the first place. A lich rises from the disguise, wrapped in purple magic, and completely exposed. Suyun and Maxman face it together, with the prison's darkness now burning around the monster. Maxman breaks down in disbelief, realizing the nation he protected has been manipulated from inside. Suyun explains that the smell of death magic was the clue pointing to a mastermind in the castle. He remembers facing a similar fake enemy before, which helped him identify this one faster. But this lich is different, because the magic here belongs to a real undead commander. Suyun understands this enemy is on another level compared to the fake lich from the Guanju dungeon. He lowers his gaze, knowing the fight ahead will not be solved with a casual swing. Suyun draws Graham properly, preparing to handle the lich before it can spread more damage. The lich studies them and starts questioning their origin, already seeing that Suyun is no ordinary person. Dark energy gathers around its hand as it decides there is no reason to let either witness leave. Suyun and Maxman ready their weapons together, finally standing on the same side of the truth. The lich declares it must kill them both here, turning the hidden prison into the real battlefield. The lich opens the fight by pouring dark energy through the prison chamber like a living storm. Suyun and Maxman brace themselves below it, realizing this enemy is far beyond the fake liches from before. Suyun moves first, rushing in before the lich can fully control the room. Graham cuts into the dark magic, but the clash shows this will not be a simple clean finish. Suyun drives his slash through the spell, forcing the lich's attack apart with raw pressure. Maxman and the lich both freeze for a second, shocked that the first exchange was not one-sided. Suyun smiles slightly, because Graham is already proving it can resist the lich's magic better than expected. But he also notices the problem. Resistance does not mean the sword can erase every dark spell. The edge takes damage from the clash, warning him that even Graham has limits against necrotic energy. Suyun understands the lich is a darkness attribute monster, and only a critical hit will truly matter. He glances back at Maxman, remembering the commander's name and what kind of role he can still play. Maxman watches tensely, trying to understand how a stranger can analyze the monster this quickly. Suyun gathers divine flame around Graham, choosing a cleaner counter to the lich's darkness. He launches upward with the blue fire trailing behind him, forcing the lich to respond immediately. The divine flame crashes through the chamber, but the lich avoids the full hit and keeps floating out of reach. A thin spark of purple energy forms at the lich's fingertip, showing it has already prepared the next spell. Dark spears tear towards Suyun from above, giving him no space to stand still. He answers with divine flame again, shaping the fire into a barrier before the spell can land cleanly. The two powers collide in midair, turning the chamber into blue light against purple darkness. Neither side breaks through completely, and that balance tells Suyun everything he needs to know. He forces the divine flame upward, but the lich's necrotic energy still holds firm against it. Suyun's expression hardens as he realizes overpowering the lich head-on will waste too much mana. The divine flame can hold back the darkness, but this lich is stronger than the weaker ones he faced before. Suyun decides a long endurance battle is a bad deal, so he needs a sharper answer. His eyes lock with the lich's glowing sockets, and the fight turns into a battle of timing. Suyun closes the distance again, refusing to let the lich control the entire room from above. He swings past the lich at close range, forcing it to dodge instead of calmly casting. The moment he passes, Suyun senses the enemy is still preparing something behind the fight. He lands against the wall and uses the surface to launch himself back into the attack. Divine flame surges around him again, keeping the lich from safely building momentum. The lich splits its presence across the chamber, using illusions and magic to blur the real target. Purple energy lashes out through the confusion, trying to catch Suyun while he is mid-attack. Suyun avoids the dark strike, reading the movement just before it erupts from the wall. The spell slams into the stone behind him, proving the lich can weaponize the entire chamber. Suyun slips past the lich's guard, pushing close enough to make the monster react. The lich twists away at the last moment, escaping before the strike can fully connect. Suyun drives forward again, keeping pressure on the lich before it can rebuild its distance. For the first time, the lich looks unsettled by how quickly Suyun keeps closing the gap. Suyan steadies Graham and prepares for the next exchange without letting his breathing break. A heavy mass of dark energy surges toward him, forcing the fight back into defense. The lich spreads its power wider, turning the air around Suyan into a trap of purple magic. Suyan watches the spell form and waits for the exact moment to move. The lich raises its hand, confident that the next attack will finally overwhelm him. Dark projectiles shoot across the chamber, coming from several angles at once. Suyan blocks and cuts through the barrage with divine flame, refusing to give the lich a clean hit. The lich pauses in annoyance, realizing Suyan is not just strong but painfully hard to pin down. Both fighters separate for a moment, and the room grows tense under the leftover dark energy. Maxman steps behind Suyan, still shaken but ready to help if the opening appears. Suyan looks to the side and starts connecting the strange feeling he has sensed since earlier. The lich's magic has been gathering quietly in the chamber this whole time. Suyan narrows his eyes, realizing the fight itself was being used as a cover. The lich lowers its head with a grin, knowing Suyan has finally noticed too late. The bar doorway behind them begins to stir with darkness from deeper inside the prison. Suyan asks if the lich is finished preparing, already understanding that the real trick is about to begin. The lich's smile widens, confirming that all the earlier pressure was only buying time. It declares the playtime is over, while Maxman steps forward with fear rising in his face. A thick shadow bursts through the chamber, moving too fast for Maxman to understand. Maxman turns toward the dark surge and realizes it is aimed straight through the battlefield. Suyan cuts in front of him with divine flame, stopping the attack before it reaches the commander. Maxman stands behind Suyan, finally seeing how dangerous the hidden preparation really was. Suyan stays low and studies the broken doorway, now focused on what lies beyond it. The prison gate hangs open into darkness, and Suyan finally understands the chamber's true purpose. This is not just a prison, it is the perfect place for death energy to gather and rot. Suyan crouches beside Maxman, readying himself while the truth settles over both of them. A place without light, filled with resentment and death, is exactly the kind of nest a lich would choose. The lich admits Suyan has noticed, while Maxman realizes the castle was infected from its deepest wound. It describes the prison like a sanctuary where the pain of the dead has been echoing for years. Maxman says the name Haven and the word lands like a confession he never wanted to face. His shock turns heavy because Haven is not just a location anymore but proof of the castle's corruption. Maxman's eyes harden as he realizes the enemy has been using his own history against him. The lich's cloak shifts, and another color appears where only one monster should have been standing. Suyan notices the jewel on its skull, realizing this enemy was never alone. His expression stays calm, but the situation has become much worse than a single hidden boss fight. Two more liches step out from the darkness, each wrapped in the same rotten purple energy. The first lich stands before them and asks the question Suyan already hates the answer to. There are 3 liches inside Haven, and the 20th floor just revealed its real nightmare. Suyan finally pieces it together, and the castle's secret becomes worse than a hidden monster. Thousands of soldiers are trapped inside Grandolum, and the liches have been wearing royal disguises among them. 3 liches inside one sealed castle means this was never just a defensive siege. The liches reveal themselves openly, almost amused that Suyan and Maxman reached the truth this late. Maxman faces them from the prison entrance, realizing the enemy has been standing beside him the entire time. Suyan stays focused while Maxman struggles to process how deep the betrayal actually goes. The liches name their true master, the Lich King who rules over the realm of the dead. Maxman understands the missing piece immediately, and the words human sacrifice hit him harder than any blade. He remembers how he once believed dying together inside the castle would be better than abandoning everyone. But that exact loyalty is what the liches wanted. Every soldier gathered in one place as sacrifice. Their plan is to use Grandolum itself as the offering needed to summon the Lich King. One lich mocks Maxman for being clever only after the trap has already closed around him. The purple-robed lich confirms it with a grin, turning Maxman's horror into open anger. They explain that while searching for sacrifices they discovered Grandolum and its trapped army. They even controlled the king's corpse, using it to disguise themselves as his trusted assistants. Maxman snaps at them, finally seeing the monsters behind every order that pushed his people toward ruin. His sword trembles in his hand as the lich says the ritual was supposed to proceed quietly. Suyan holds Maxman back, knowing anger will make him exactly as easy to manipulate as before. The lich announces that the summoning will begin anyway, now that the truth is already exposed. The 3 liches spread out across the chamber, surrounding Suyan and Maxman with no easy path out. Suyan watches their formation carefully, already looking for the spell hidden beneath their confidence. The purple-robed lich raises one hand, gathering a dark spell instead of attacking directly. A black-purple line crawls across the floor, marking the start of a skill Suyan recognizes too late. The magic flashes toward them, forcing Suyun to shield Maxman before the spell closes in. A dark barrier rises around them, sealing the space like a cage built from death energy. Suyun grits his teeth as the spell completes, realizing this is one of the Lich's highest-ranking skills. Darkness Guidance activates, and the Lich uses it to take control of the battlefield itself. Suyun immediately understands that ordinary Holy Flame alone will not break through this spell fast enough. Maxman hears the name Lich's Apostle, and the situation becomes even more terrifying. The Liches stand confidently behind the spell, certain that Suyun and Maxman are already trapped. One Lich clenches its fist, pouring more power into the dark cage before they can escape. Suyun refuses to accept the trap, even as the spell begins crushing the space around them. He reaches through the darkness and curses under his breath, forcing himself to find the weak point. A white slash cuts through the black spell, ripping open the barrier from the inside. The entire prison gate bursts with light as Suyun breaks the Lich's high-ranking magic. The Liches stare in disbelief because that spell was not supposed to be destroyed by a human challenger. Suyun steps up beside Maxman, proving that the trap bought the Liches only a few seconds. Maxman realizes Suyun broke through it completely, and his view of the young man changes again. The purple-robed Lich studies Suyun with anger now, no longer treating him like an accidental intruder. Maxman wonders if Suyun's weapon must be a holy sword, because nothing else explains what he just saw. But the thought only reminds Maxman of the people he failed to protect under the king's command. He raises his sword again, choosing to face the Liches even if he cannot match their magic. Suyun watches him carefully, sensing that Maxman is about to move on emotion alone. Maxman says he will never forgive them, and his grip tightens until the sword shakes. He charges forward, declaring that this is where their plan ends. The red-robed Lich steps out to meet him, ready to punish that reckless charge. Maxman pushes ahead anyway, while the Liches insist they are too close to their goal to stop now. Another Lich turns to escape deeper into the castle, trying to protect the ritual instead of fighting fair. Maxman refuses to let him go, throwing himself after the fleeing Lich with everything he has left. The Lich fires dark magic back at him, trying to cut him down before he reaches the corridor. A heavy purple blast tears across the floor, forcing Maxman into a dangerous chase. The attack expands behind him, threatening to swallow the entire path before he can close the distance. Suyun answers with Phoenix, sending blue holy flame into the dark spell from above. Maxman feels the heat rush past him as Suyun's flame takes over the battlefield. The Phoenix dives through the chamber, turning the entire fight into blue fire and pressure. Its flame collides with the Lich's darkness, splitting the purple attack before it can reach Maxman. The two powers explode against each other, and the Lich's spell finally starts to crack apart. The Phoenix drives harder through the impact, forcing the darkness back instead of simply blocking it. The red-robed Lich looks up too late, as the blue flame closes in from above. He panics and screams for it to stay away, suddenly very less smug about the whole sacrifice plan. The Phoenix turns toward the next Lich, making the entire group realize Suyun can target them one by one. One Lich stumbles away in panic, claiming he did nothing as if that defense could possibly work here. Suyun turns back toward Maxman, realizing the commander's anger is still dragging him forward. Maxman stands with his head lowered, caught between rage, guilt, and the weight of every soldier outside. Suyun tells him not to let anger take over, but Maxman asks what he is supposed to do instead. Suyun looks at him without rushing because this moment matters more than another swing of the sword. Maxman stands alone in his shame, still thinking he must carry the entire castle by himself. Suyun opens his hand, offering him a different answer than blind sacrifice or lonely responsibility. He asks Maxman to trust him and allow him to lead from here. Maxman stares at the offered hand, finally facing the choice he avoided for too long. Suyun waits in silence, ready to take command if Maxman can let someone share the burden. Suyun's Phoenix dives through the prison like a blue judgment, chasing the Liches before they can regroup. The flame crashes into one of the Liches midair, forcing the monster to defend instead of continue in the ritual. Maxman watches from below as Suyun keeps the pressure on, realizing the fight is already moving beyond him. He hesitates, still torn between chasing the Liches and protecting the soldiers trapped inside Grandalum. Maxman grips his sword in frustration because every choice now feels like abandoning someone. Suyun notices that hesitation immediately, and he understands exactly what is holding Maxman back. Instead of rushing after the Liches blindly, Suyun turns his attention to the real priority. He asks Maxman which matters more right now, killing the Liches, or saving the people they plan to sacrifice. That question echoes the guide's advice. In any situation, do what has to be done. The trial itself already gave the answer. The soldiers are not enemies and can become allies. Suyun decides to leave their protection to Maxman while he handles the monsters creating the crisis. He launches forward with Graham, cutting straight through the space before the Liches can widen the gap. One lich turns in surprise, sensing Su Yun's attack closing in far faster than expected. Su Yun lands back inside the prison chamber, already setting up a much larger move. He steadies Graham in front of him, treating the sword like the center point of the entire battlefield. With one controlled grip, he draws out the weapon's holy power instead of wasting motion. A clean line of light slices upward, carving through the prison wall and ceiling in one stroke. The holy slash erupts all the way through the structure, tearing open a path toward the outside. Su Yun stands beneath the falling debris, letting the opening expose the prison to the castle above. Outside, the soldiers stare in disbelief as the hidden underground chamber suddenly breaks open. The castle starts collapsing from within, and the soldiers realize something far worse is happening below. Stone walls burst apart as the prison's darkness spills into the open air. Purple energy gathers under the rubble, proving the liches are still trying to continue the summoning. One lich rises above the wreckage, irritated that Su Yun and Maxman made the ritual this troublesome. He orders the others to summon the dead, warning them that failure means death before the Lich King arrives. The threat works instantly, and the frightened lich agrees before his own master can punish him. Another lich pulls himself back into the air, wounded but still desperate to complete the ritual. He looks around for Su Yun only to find him already waiting in the blind spot behind him. The lich twists back in panic, realizing Su Yun crossed the distance without giving him a chance to react. He asks when Su Yun got there, but that question comes much too late to help him. Su Yun bursts forward again, turning the lich's confusion into another opening. The monster's grin finally breaks because Su Yun's speed is starting to feel impossible to track. The blue-robed lich snaps in rage, furious that a human keeps interrupting their master's plan. Its dark magic slams down hard, trying to crush the area before Su Yun can move again. Su Yun meets the spell head-on, driving holy power directly through the purple force. The lich is forced back across the chamber, losing the calm control it had at the start. It gathers a dense sphere of darkness, choosing a stronger spell to stop Su Yun's movement completely. A purple cube snaps shut around Su Yun, trapping him in a sealed space of death magic. The lich drives power into the prison, trying to crush him before he can break free. Su Yun answers by calling Phoenix again, forcing Holy Flame to burn through the spell from inside. He pushes the flames harder, using his own mana to keep the bird alive inside the barrier. The Phoenix rises in a column of blue fire, tearing the cube apart from its center. Su Yun drops back to the ground as the shattered spell dissolves around him, but the cost hits him immediately, and even Su Yun has to catch his breath for a second. The lich notices the strain and tells him resisting is pointless. It understands the Phoenix is eating through his mana, and it tries to turn that weakness into surrender. Su Yun smiles instead, which is never a comforting sign for the enemy in front of him. He dismisses the Phoenix calmly, proving he was never relying on only one answer. Su Yun asks who said he would be powerless without mana, and Graham begins to shine again. The lich freezes, while Maxman stares in shock at the power still forming around Su Yun's blade. Maxman clenches his teeth, realizing Su Yun is still planning to fight while carrying everyone's burden. Su Yun gives him a small smile, as if asking for trust one more time. He steps past Maxman and moves toward the liches again, leaving no space for hesitation. Su Yun decides he will do what has to be done, even if the burden is ugly. The blue-robed lich turns toward him, suddenly sensing that the fight has shifted again. The chamber goes quiet for one breath, right before Su Yun's next attack tears through it. The liches are thrown into motion, struggling to stay balanced as Su Yun breaks their formation apart. A blade cuts into the cracked ground, marking the start of another fast exchange. The impact explodes across the castle floor, sending dust and pressure toward the soldiers outside. One lich looks down and thinks the attack is finished, but Su Yun's flame is already closing in. Blue strikes rain through the wreckage, keeping the liches from focusing on the summoning circle. Another blow pierces the smoke, forcing one of the undead casters to abandon his spell. Purple magic lashes back at Su Yun, trying to catch him during the follow-up. He twists away from the attack, choosing the next angle before the spell can fully land. Blue flame gathers above the battlefield again, but this time, Su Yun shapes it around his sword. Holy fire and dark magic collide in midair, cracking the space between Su Yun and the lich. Maxman calls out for him to wait, worried that Su Yun is pushing too far alone. His voice shakes with frustration because he already knows how much Su Yun has done for him. Su Yun answers without turning fully around, keeping his focus on the enemies ahead. Maxman admits he already owes Su Yun a lot, and the words hit with real weight. Su Yun activates transformation, turning that trust into the holy blade needed to cut through death magic. With holy power wrapped around Graham, Su Yun smiles and prepares to end the lich's ritual himself. Outside the castle, the soldiers search for casualties while trying to understand what is happening inside. A blue flame shoots into the sky from the castle, proving the battle below has reached the surface. One lich appears above the walls, and the soldiers finally see the monster behind the chaos. The guards look up in horror as purple energy begins spilling from the lich's body. It reaches down with both hands, pulling red magic threads from the dead scattered outside Grandalum. The spell spreads across the battlefield, dragging the fallen back into motion under its control. Purple smoke bursts across the ground as the dead begin rising outside the castle walls. Silhouettes stumble through the smoke, turning the battlefield into a nightmare before the soldiers' eyes. The guards finally realize what they are seeing, and fear cuts through their formation instantly. The resurrected dead march forward with purple light burning in their eyes. The lich laughs and orders the monsters to attack, using the soldiers' own dead against them. The men on the wall stare up at the floating lich, unsure whether to fight or run. One soldier looks back in panic, searching for someone who can still give an order. Maxman arrives at the wall, wounded but steady enough to take command again. The soldier turns to him immediately, desperate for direction before the situation collapses completely. Maxman studies the spell and notices the undead are still imperfect, which gives them a narrow chance. He faces the lich above them, understanding that the castle is now being attacked from both sides. A soldier asks what they should do about the dead outside, and Maxman knows there is no clean answer. Maxman decides their job is not to defeat the lich, but to buy time. He tells the soldiers to follow him and prepare the evacuation once the opening appears. Maxman accepts that he cannot win this fight head-on, so he focuses on protecting the troops. Deep inside the castle, Suyin launches forward with blue holy power wrapped around his blade. His strike crashes into the lich's darkness, turning the chamber into a violent clash of light and magic. The impact fills the room with smoke, but Suyin keeps moving before the lich can recover. A beam of holy energy drills straight through the dark spell, opening a path toward the enemy. More blue strikes follow immediately, forcing the lich to defend from several angles at once. Suyin hangs in the air above the battlefield, already lining up the next attack. He rushes the lich directly, cutting through the space before it can rebuild distance. Graham shines with holy power as Suyin brings the blade down toward the lich's core. The strike lands cleanly, sending blue light through the monster's body and breaking its rhythm. The impact slams into the floor, shaking the underground chamber again. Suyin lands low while the lich staggers, finally forced into the position it wanted to avoid. Even wounded, the lich insists it has grown stronger and may be the strongest among the apostles. Suyin stands across from it in silence, letting the monster waste breath on pride. He rushes forward again, refusing to give the lich even 1 second to recover. The lich mocks him as a human challenger, still believing Suyin cannot truly finish it. Suyin's blade strikes the jewel on its skull, cutting through the place where its power is focused. He lands behind the lich while the monster drops to the floor, its confidence finally broken. The lich struggles to rise, shaken by how easily Suyin reached its weak point. Suyin looks back with a cold expression, already seeing that the ritual is not over. He tells the lich its plan has failed, but the monster still starts laughing through the pain. The lich says Suyin is the one wasting time, because stopping one apostle does not stop everything. It crawls across the floor and warns that Suyin cannot stop all of them alone. Suyin exhales quietly, realizing the lich is buying time even while losing. The monster watches him from below, still clinging to the larger plan behind the battle. Suyin answers that the Lich King will fall by his hand anyway. The Lich's eye flashes as Suyun's words cut deeper than the blade ever could. Suyin destroys the remaining body, leaving the Lich's dark smoke to scatter into the air. For a moment, Suyin pauses as an old memory rises behind those words. He remembers the future Lich King who invaded reality during the world outbreak, and he remembers the truth clearly. The person who defeated that Lich King was him. That memory connects to the Guanju dungeon and the pattern of liches hiding behind false bodies. Suyin realizes these apostles are repeating the same kind of survival trick. Above him, Maxman turns sharply as another wave of attacks cuts across the battlefield. Suyin keeps moving through the enemy fire, and Maxman wonders if even he can handle all of this. The Lich darts away while Maxman curses, frustrated that the enemy keeps abusing the chaos outside. Maxman understands the problem. The Lich is hard to pin down while the troops remain in danger. The Lich floats with a twisted laugh, deciding it only needs to get closer to complete its role. A sudden red flash strikes near its face, interrupting the monster's movement. Maxman hears the Lich mutter about its friend, and confusion cuts through his focus. The Lich spirals into panic, realizing one of the other apostles has been destroyed. Maxman begins to understand what happened, but the Lich's shock turns into rage first. It screams over the death of its ally, and the castle responds with a surge of purple power. A massive magic circle spreads over Grandalum, meaning the ritual is still trying to activate. The soldiers below are caught in purple smoke as the spell begins pulling at their bodies. Maxman moves among them immediately, forcing himself to protect his men before chasing the Lich. The Lich sees the soldiers resisting and screams at Maxman for interfering with the ritual. Maxman knows ordinary troops cannot survive a direct hit from this magic, so he steps in himself. He drives forward through the purple blast, using his body and blade to shield the soldiers behind him. Su Yen spots the opening from below and launches himself toward the floating Lich. He crashes into the monster with Graham, cutting straight through the attack before it reaches Maxman. Su Yen's eyes sharpen as holy light gathers again, ready to end the ritual at its source.